Ben and Claire stood on the rooftop of the SmartFlow building, the night wind whipping around them. Alexandra clutched a hard drive in her trembling hand, her body poised dangerously close to the edge. The city lights stretched out below them like a carpet of stars, indifferent to the drama unfolding above. "You don't understand," Alexandra said, her voice breaking. "David promised we would rebuild everything from the ruins of SmartFlow. We would prove she can't exist without us." Ben took a careful step forward, keeping his voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through him. Claire tried to negotiate, her CEO composure cracking under the weight of personal betrayal. "Alexandra, please," Claire called, moving slowly toward her CTO. "Whatever has happened, we can talk about it." Alexandra's fingers hovered over the device, a simple gesture that threatened to erase everything. "It's too late for talking," she whispered. 4 months earlier, it was Friday evening. Ben Carson, 34, stood in his modest living room, wiping smudges from picture frames and straightening coffee table books that nobody ever read. His son Tyler, 8 years old with unruly brown hair and mismatched socks, bounced on the worn leather couch. "Dad, what if she has robot parts?" "People from the internet are sometimes robots." Ben smiled, his weathered hands pausing on a photo of Tyler as a toddler. "Then I'll just have to reprogram her to like dinosaur chicken nuggets and bad dad jokes." "That's not how robots work." "It's exactly how robots work. I was a systems engineer, remember?" Tyler rolled his eyes dramatically. "Before I was born. That's like ancient history." 3 years ago isn't ancient history, buddy." The familiar weight settled on Ben's shoulders. 3 years since Sarah left. 3 years since she emptied their bank accounts and disappeared with her yoga instructor, leaving Ben with a mountain of his father's medical bills and a bewildered 5-year-old who kept asking when mommy was coming home. 3 years since Ben Carson, rising star at Meridian Tech, became Ben Carson, warehouse manager at Peterson Distribution. The doorbell rang. Tyler jumped up suddenly, shy, clutching his dinosaur flashlight like a talisman. "Remember, buddy, be yourself, but maybe save the robot theories for dessert." Earlier that day, across town, Claire Anderson sat in her sleek corner office, the glass walls offering a panoramic view of the city. She pinched the bridge of her nose, fighting the headache that had been building all afternoon. The quarterly report displayed on her monitor showed impressive growth figures for SmartFlow Solutions, but the tension in the room suggested otherwise. "The board is concerned about security vulnerabilities in the Nexus project," said Richard Benson, lead investor and chairman. His silver hair and tailored suit projected authority, but his eyes held genuine worry. "David's legal team has been making noise about intellectual property claims." Claire straightened in her chair. "David has no claim to Nexus. The architecture was developed entirely after his departure." "Nevertheless," Richard continued, "we need to strengthen our security protocols before the next development phase. Another breach could be catastrophic." After the board members filed out, Claire remained at her desk, staring at her phone. 3 missed calls from her lawyer, 2 from her housekeeper, and a text from her ex-husband that made her stomach knot. "Saw Emma's school project won first place. Strange I wasn't invited to the ceremony. Perhaps the judge should know about your recent overnight business trips." Claire deleted the message with a trembling finger. David's tactics were getting more aggressive, tracking her movements, threatening to use the children in their ongoing war. The restraining order seemed to only fuel his determination. Her phone rang again. Alexandra Winters, her chief technology officer and closest ally at SmartFlow. "Please tell me you have good news," Claire answered. "The development team fixed the authentication bug, but I'm still concerned about the firewall configuration." Alexandra replied, "We need specialized expertise, Claire. Someone who sees security differently." Claire sighed. "I know. I've had the HR team searching for months." After hanging up, Claire stared at her computer screen, the dating app profile she'd created on a whim still open in her browser. The Claire Anderson on the screen bore little resemblance to the CEO of a multi-million-dollar tech company. Just a woman with shoulder-length hair and a casual smile looking for connection. She'd almost canceled the date a dozen times, but something about Ben Carson's profile had intrigued her. A former systems engineer now working in warehouse management, a single father putting his son first. What had she written in her profile? Tech support specialist. Single mom, simple, approachable, and normal. Everything she hadn't felt in years. Her finger hovered over the delete button when another text arrived. this time from her housekeeper. Mr. David drove by the house again. Emma asked why her father was watching from the car. Claire made her decision in that moment. She wouldn't cancel. She couldn't go home, not with David lurking. She'd take the children with her. At least they'd be safe from their father's psychological games for one evening. At Peterson Distribution, Ben's supervisor frowned at the request for early departure. Again, Carson, that's the third time this month. Ben nodded, maintaining eye contact. My son's school called. He has a fever. It was a small lie, but one that worked. As a single parent, Ben had learned which excuses earned sympathy and which earned suspicion. He'd become an expert at navigating the narrow path between professional responsibility and parental duty. In the break room, he overheard two engineers discussing a security protocol issue that had cost the company thousands in delayed shipments. Ben paused, the solution immediately apparent to him. A simple authentication bypass was creating vulnerability in the tracking system. Have you tried implementing a two-factor verification at the distribution checkpoint? He suggested, unable to stop himself. The engineers turned surprised. What would you know about it, Carson? Don't you just count boxes? Ben forced a smile. Just a thought. Forget I mentioned it. As he walked away, he heard one engineer mutter to the other, actually, that might work. Let's try it. That evening, after picking up Tyler from school, Ben drove to Lakeside Care Center where his father resided. Robert Carson's room was small but comfortable, photos of Ben and Tyler adorning the walls alongside faded images of Robert in his Air Force uniform. Hey, Dad, Ben said, squeezing his father's shoulder gently. How are you feeling today? Robert looked up from his book, recognition flickering in his eyes. Some days were better than others, with the early onset dementia complicated by neurological effects of Agent Orange exposure during his Vietnam service. Today seemed to be one of the good days. Benjamin, he smiled, and Tyler, come to visit your old grandpa? Tyler hugged his grandfather, launching into a detailed explanation of his school science project. Ben watched them together, the knot in his chest both painful and warm. The medical bills kept coming. Experimental treatments, specialized care medications not covered by insurance. The move from engineering to warehouse management had been necessary. Fewer hours, more stability for Tyler, but the financial sacrifice had been substantial. You look tired, son, Robert said, after Tyler went to explore the facility's fish tank with a nurse. I'm fine, Dad, just a long week. Still at the warehouse? What happened to that engineering job? Ben hesitated. His father's memory was patchy, sometimes crystal clear, sometimes foggy on recent events. I needed something with regular hours for Tyler. Robert nodded slowly. You always put others first, just like your mother. His eyes drifted to the window. Sarah called yesterday, said she's coming back. Ben's heart sank. His father's confusion was worsening. Dad, Sarah's been gone for 3 years now. Remember? Robert frowned, then clarity seemed to return. Of course, I know that. He gripped Ben's hand with surprising strength. You deserve better, son. Someone who sees your worth. Across town in an upscale residential neighborhood, Claire helped her children pack overnight bags. Why do we have to go with you to meet your friend? Mom asked, her 9-year-old face scrunched in skepticism. Can't we stay with Marianne? Claire zipped up Liam's dinosaur backpack. Marianne has the night off, sweetie. Besides, I thought you might like to meet someone new. He has a son about Liam's age. Is he your boyfriend? Emma persisted with the directness only children can master. No, just a friend, someone I'm meeting for the first time. Liam, 7 years old with his mother's bright green eyes, looked up from his toy dinosaur. Dad says you shouldn't have friends that are boys. Claire's jaw tightened. Your father and I have different opinions on many things, Liam. She kept her tone light, years of practice, hiding her true feelings about David from the children. Now let's grab your inhaler just in case. As they loaded into her car, Claire noticed a dark sedan parked down the street. David watching again. She fought the urge to confront him, knowing it would only create a scene in front of the children. Instead, she sent a quick text to her lawyer, documenting the latest violation of the restraining order, then pulled away from the curb. In a downtown high-rise, David Spencer sat in his expensive office monitoring a tracking app on his phone. Claire's car was moving, not toward her usual dinner spots, but into a middle-class neighborhood across town. He smiled, taking a sip of scotch. She's bringing the children to a stranger's house. he said to the woman sitting across from him. Another piece of evidence for the custody modification. Alexandra shifted uncomfortably. Are you sure this is necessary, David? Using the children as leverage seems... It's necessary. David cut her off. Claire took everything from me, my company, my reputation. She'll learn what that feels like. He looked up, his handsome features hardening. You remember our agreement? Alexandra nodded, guilt and determination warring in her expression. I remember. Back at Ben's house, Tyler peered out the window for the fifth time in as many minutes. Is she here yet? Not yet, buddy. And remember, it's just dinner. Don't get too excited. But Ben couldn't help his own nervousness. This was his first date since Sarah left. If it could even be called a date, just two single parents having tacos and conversation. Nothing complicated. Nothing that could hurt Tyler if it didn't work out. He checked his phone, looking at Claire's profile again. There was something in her eyes that had drawn him in, a determination, a quiet strength that reminded him of himself. Single mom, 2 kids, works in tech support. Normal, uncomplicated, safe. The doorbell rang and Tyler jumped up like he'd been shocked. Ben took a deep breath, straightened his shirt, and opened the door. The porch light illuminated a woman with shoulder-length chestnut hair, bright green eyes that couldn't quite mask their exhaustion, and a hesitant smile. She wore a simple blouse and jeans, nothing like the profile picture from the dating app. Hi, I'm Claire. She glanced back toward an older model sedan parked at the curb. My kids are in the car. They haven't eaten. Her voice carried equal parts shame and defiance. Ben looked past her to the car, where 2 small shadows moved in the back seat. Something in his chest tightened, not from disappointment, but recognition. He knew that look, the one that said, judge me and I'll walk away. But God, I need help right now. Did they eat lunch? Ben asked. Claire blinked, clearly surprised by the question. School lunch? I wasn't sure if I should bring them in. Bring them in? Tacos don't judge. And I made plenty. Relief broke across her face like sunrise. Are you sure? I'm a single dad. If there's one thing I understand, it's hungry kids and complicated circumstances. As Claire turned to wave her children in from the car, Ben caught sight of another vehicle, a dark sedan slowly cruising past his house. Something about it raised his engineer's instincts for patterns out of place. But then Tyler was beside him, peering curiously at the approaching children, and the moment passed. What Ben couldn't know was that this simple act of kindness, opening his door to a woman and her children on a Friday night, would pull him into a web of corporate espionage, technological innovation, and unexpected love. That the woman claiming to need rescue would ultimately be his salvation. And that somewhere in the city, a man was already plotting to destroy everything they might build together. Sometimes the greatest engineering isn't in systems, but in second chances. My kids are in the car. Part 2. Minutes later, Claire's children, Emma 9 and Liam 7, sat with Tyler at the kitchen table. The initial awkwardness dissolved as Tyler demonstrated his world-famous method for creating the perfect taco, involving precise layering techniques and a ceremony of salsa application that made Liam giggle. Claire sat perched on the edge of her chair, shoulders tight. I should explain. You don't owe me explanations. Not tonight. Ben passed her a plate. Tonight is just tacos and maybe some terrible jokes from an 8-year-old who's been saving them up all week. Did you hear the one about the computer that went to the doctor? Tyler announced right on cue. What happened? Liam asked, taco sauce on his chin. It had a virus. The kitchen filled with the sound of children's laughter. Genuine, unfiltered joy that made the cramped space feel suddenly right-sized. As the children ate, Ben noticed the dark circles under Claire's eyes, the way she kept glancing toward the windows. The slight flinch when headlights swept across the room as a car passed by. Dessert in the living room with a movie, Ben suggested. I think I've got some ice cream sandwiches in the freezer. The kids raced off, leaving Ben and Claire at the table. I was gonna cancel, Claire said softly. I should have. This isn't fair to you. Life isn't fair to any of us. That's why tacos exist. A small smile flickered across her face. Is that your philosophy? Tacos solve all problems. Tacos duct tape and knowing when to start over. It's gotten me this far. Ben gathered the plates. I was a single parent at 26. I know that walk, the one where you try not to look hungry or too tired because people assume things. Claire's head jerked up, her eyes widening as if seeing him for the first time. You don't seem like someone who struggled. What does struggle look like exactly? Ben's voice carried no offense, just curiosity. Before she could answer, Ben's attention shifted to the window. A dark sedan had parked 3 houses down, its engine still running. Claire followed his gaze and instantly tensed. Is someone following you? He asked quietly, keeping his voice light so the children wouldn't hear. Claire's fingers curled around her water glass. My ex, he doesn't want custody. He wants control. Ben's jaw tightened. He'd seen enough controlling men in his father's VA support group to recognize the pattern. The kids can have the guest room tonight. You take my room. I'll sleep on the couch. I can't ask that of you. You didn't ask, I offered. There's a difference. As the night deepened, Ben watched from the window as the sedan finally drove away. He made up the beds with fresh sheets, found an unused toothbrush for Claire, and set out clean towels. Such simple things, yet the gratitude in her eyes made him feel like he'd offered her the moon. With the children asleep, Claire joined Ben on the porch. The summer night hummed with cicadas and distant traffic. Thank you, she said, wrapping her arms around herself despite the warm air. Not just for the room, but for not making me explain myself tonight. Tomorrow's soon enough for explanations if you want to give them. Do you always take in strays? Ben smiled, looking out at the quiet street. Only the ones who remind me of myself. The next morning, Ben woke to the smell of coffee. He found Claire in the kitchen, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, making pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, while the kids offered creative direction. The T-Rex needs bigger teeth, Stegosaurus next. Ben paused in the doorway, struck by how right it felt. His kitchen filled with life, again the lonely silence pushed back by childish debate over prehistoric anatomy. Good morning, Claire said, spatula in hand. I hope you don't mind. The kids were up early and, she gestured to the pancake zoo emerging on a platter. Mind that this is the most excitement my kitchen has seen since Tyler tried to microwave a spoon to see if it would really spark. Did it? Liam asked with dangerous interest. Never try it, Ben and Claire said in unison, then laughed. After breakfast, while the kids built a fort in the living room, Claire's phone buzzed. Her face paled as she read the message. He tracked my location again. She showed Ben the screen. Hope the kids slept well at your boyfriend's place. Nice neighborhood. Above your pay grade, isn't it? Ben's stomach tightened. This isn't just jealousy, is it? David isn't dangerous physically. He's just everywhere. Watching, waiting for me to make a mistake so he can take the kids. Claire's voice cracked. We've been separated 2 years. He has a new girlfriend every month, but he can't stand the thought of me moving on, of not being able to control where I go, who I see. Ben thought of his own ex-wife, who had at least had the decency to vanish completely. He wasn't sure which was worse, total abandonment or this constant shadow. Stay here at least until we figure something out. Claire stared at him. You can't be serious. You barely know me. I know enough. I know what it looks like when someone's afraid to go home. Emma appeared in the doorway clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. Mom, can we stay? Tyler has a Lego spaceship and says I can help build the moon base. The vulnerability in Emma's voice made Ben's chest ache. How many times had this little girl been uprooted, forced to adapt to new circumstances, because the adults in her life couldn't get their act together? We'll see, sweetie, Claire said. Mr. Carson might need his space back. It's Ben, and there's plenty of space. He met Claire's eyes, trying to convey what he couldn't say in front of Emma, that he understood fear, that sometimes safety was worth more than privacy, that his home, humble as it was, could be a sanctuary if she needed one. Later that afternoon, while the kids played in the backyard, Ben took Claire into his small home office. Unlike the rest of the house, which was functional but sparse, this room held evidence of a different life. Bookshelves lined with technical manuals, a whiteboard covered in diagrams, 3 computer monitors on a desk too large for the space. You said you were a systems engineer, Claire asked. Ben nodded, suddenly self-conscious. At Meridian Tech, I designed security infrastructure for their cloud services. And now I manage inventory flow at a warehouse. The hours are predictable, the health insurance is decent, and I'm home every night for Tyler. Claire studied a framed patent on the wall. You invented this, co-invented, Intrusion detection system for multi-layered network environments. Not exactly dinner conversation material. Claire traced the glass with her fingertip. Why did you leave engineering? Ben's jaw tightened. The real answer was too complicated, too raw for someone he'd just met. Life happened. My father got sick. Agent Orange complications from Vietnam. The medical bills. Then my wife left. And suddenly I was a single parent with a mortgage and a 5-year-old who needed stability more than he needed a dad working 80-hour weeks. I'm sorry. Don't be. We're managing. Ben gestured to a complex diagram on the whiteboard. I still tinker design systems. Most of them never leave this room, but it keeps the brain cells firing. Claire moved closer to the whiteboard, her eyes narrowing as she studied the diagram. This is brilliant. It's just a hobby project, automated inventory management system that learns from human behavior patterns. No, it's more than that. This could revolutionize supply chain management. The predictive modeling alone. Ben blinked, surprised by her technical assessment. You know, systems design, a flicker of something, hesitation alarm, crossed Claire's face. I work in tech support. You pick things up. Before Ben could probe further, Tyler burst into the room, dragging Liam by the hand. Dad, can we go to the park, the one with the rocket ship climbing thing? The moment broken, Claire stepped back from the whiteboard. We should get going anyway. We've imposed enough. It's not an imposition. The words came out more forcefully than Ben intended. He softened his tone. Stay at least for the weekend. Give yourself time to figure things out. Claire looked like she might argue, then her phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, her face hardening. The park sounds great. At the playground, Ben watched the children race across monkey bars and slide down poles. Claire sat beside him on the bench, her shoulders gradually relaxing in the afternoon sun. How did you do it? She asked suddenly. Do what? Start over. Ben considered the question, watching Tyler help Emma across a difficult section of the climbing structure. One day at a time. Some days it was just about making sure Tyler had clean clothes and food. Other days we could think bigger, like what school would be best or how to save for college. He smiled. I had help. My neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, Vietnam vet like my dad. He watched Tyler after school when I had to work late, taught him how to fish. Community matters more than most people realize until they don't have it. On the playground, Liam had reached the top of the rocket ship and was calling for his mother to watch. Claire waved, her smile genuine for the first time since Ben had met her. He's been afraid of heights since he was 3, she said softly. This is a big moment. Ben nodded, understanding the milestone for what it was. A child feeling secure enough to face a fear. Little victories, he said. Little victories, Claire echoed. That evening, after a dinner of spaghetti and garlic bread, Ben sat on the back porch steps while the kids caught fireflies in the yard. Claire joined him, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. I need to be honest with you, she said, passing him a mug. Ben braced himself, wondering what complication was coming. More abusive ex-husband details. Financial troubles. Legal issues. I have a friend who runs a tech startup, SmartFlow Solutions. They're looking for a consultant on a security integration project. Claire fidgeted with her mug. After seeing your work, would you be interested? It would be remote, flexible hours. Ben stared at her. You want to recommend me for a job? Is that weird? It's weird, isn't it? Claire backpedaled. Forget I mentioned it. It's just that system on your whiteboard. It's exactly what they're trying to build. No, it's not weird. It's unexpected. I haven't done consulting work in years. The pay is good, really good. Claire looked up at him. You've helped me when you had no reason to. Let me do this small thing in return. Ben thought of his dwindling savings account of Tyler's college fund that consisted of loose change and a jar of his father's mounting medical bills. I'd need to see the project scope first. Claire's face brightened. I'll have them send over the NDA tomorrow. 3 days later, Claire and her children returned to their apartment across town. Ben found himself standing in his suddenly quiet living room, the absence of childish laughter and extra footsteps making the house feel emptier than it had before. Tyler sat on the couch sulking. Why did they have to leave? They have their own home, buddy. But Emma was teaching me how to draw dragons. Ben ruffled his son's hair. We'll have them over again soon. The NDA from SmartFlow Solutions arrived that afternoon. Ben read through it twice, his engineer's mind picking apart the legal language. The project was substantial, integrating security protocols across distributed manufacturing environments. The compensation was, as Claire had promised, exceptional. That night, after Tyler was asleep, Ben sat in his office staring at the whiteboard. For the first time in 3 years, he felt a familiar spark. The intellectual challenge, the puzzle-solving aspect of engineering that had once defined him. He picked up a marker and began to work. 2 weeks later, Ben submitted his first deliverable to SmartFlow. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. The project lead, someone named Alex, sent an email praising Ben's innovative approach and requesting a video call to discuss expanding the scope. The call was scheduled for Wednesday afternoon. Ben took a half day from the warehouse, feeling vaguely guilty about his growing excitement. The consulting work had rekindled something he thought he'd lost: pride in his abilities, confidence in his technical judgment. As he prepared for the video call, adjusting his borrowed webcam and clearing space on his desk, his phone buzzed with a text from Claire. "How did they like your proposal?" Ben smiled. She'd been checking in regularly, always seeming genuinely interested in the project's progress. "They loved it. Video call today to discuss expansion. They'd be idiots not to. Good luck." The video call connected, and Ben found himself facing not Alex, but a boardroom full of executives. At the head of the table sat a woman in her early 30s, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, wearing a blazer that probably cost more than Ben's monthly mortgage payment. "Mr. Carson, thank you for joining us. I'm Claire Anderson, CEO of SmartFlow Solutions." Ben froze, the words not quite computing. Claire, CEO. He stared at the screen, trying to reconcile this polished executive with the vulnerable woman who had sat in his kitchen making dinosaur pancakes. I thought I was meeting with Alex," he managed, his mind racing. "Alexandra Winters, our CTO. Claire, this new professional." Claire gestured to a woman beside her. "We've all been thoroughly impressed with your work. Your security integration framework is exactly what we've been searching for." Ben struggled to maintain his composure as the meeting proceeded. Claire led the discussion with confident authority, demonstrating intimate knowledge of the project and asking technical questions that revealed deep understanding of systems architecture. There was no trace of the hesitant, fearful woman who had appeared on his doorstep. When the call ended, Ben sat motionless, staring at the blank screen. His phone buzzed immediately. "Can we talk in person?" Ben's response was terse. "Yes. Tonight, 8:00 p.m. The hours until then passed in a blur. Ben went through the motions at the warehouse, his mind replaying every conversation, every moment with Claire, searching for clues he'd missed. Had it all been an act, some elaborate scheme to evaluate him as a potential consultant? At precisely 8:00, a black Tesla pulled into Ben's driveway. Claire stepped out, dressed in business attire, looking nothing like the woman he'd invited into his home. She carried a portfolio under one arm and walked to the door with confident strides. Ben opened the door before she could knock. "Come in, Miss Anderson, or should I call you CEO Anderson?" Claire winced at his tone. "I deserve that." They sat in the living room, the space between them charged with tension. Tyler was at a sleepover, leaving them alone in the uncomfortable silence. "It wasn't a lie exactly," Claire finally said. "For sure, everything about David, about the kids, that was all true, just not the part about who you are." "I never said I wasn't Claire Anderson. I just omitted my position." "And the part about working in tech support, was that just a little white lie too?" Claire looked down. "I did work in tech support 15 years ago when I was putting myself through MIT. Ben leaned back, struggling to process the revelation. "So what was this, some kind of social experiment? Let's see how the other half lives." "No," Claire's voice cracked with genuine emotion. "It was never supposed to be. I was having dinner with a friend when she suggested online dating. I made a profile on a whim. When we matched, I was just going to cancel, but then what? Then I read your profile again. Systems engineer turned warehouse manager. Single dad. There was something in your eyes in that photo. Resilience. I wanted to meet you, but I was afraid if you knew who I was, you'd ask for a job, try to scam you. People treat me differently when they know I'm worth 9 figures." Claire's bluntness silenced him. "They want something. always. I thought just once I could meet someone who saw me, not my bank account or my company. Ben stood pacing the small living room. So you created this elaborate fiction. Poor Claire running from her controlling ex needing shelter for her kids. David is real. The custody battle is real. The tracking, the control issues, all real. Claire's eyes flashed. The only fiction was my economic status. I wanted one night of being seen as a person, not a resource to be exploited. And then you exploited me instead. The bitterness in Ben's voice surprised even him. You saw my designs and thought, hey, this guy could be useful. That's not fair. Your work is brilliant. You deserve to be doing it professionally, not hidden away in a spare bedroom. It wasn't your call to make. You manipulated me, used my sympathy, Ben stopped himself before saying feelings. Claire stood, placing the portfolio on the coffee table. Inside is a formal offer. Senior security architect. Full benefits, stock options, flexible schedule, so you can be there for Tyler. Her voice softened. Take it or don't. You've earned it either way. I don't want your charity. It's not charity. It's recognition of talent. Claire moved toward the door. I'm sorry for how this happened, but I'm not sorry I met you or that I saw what you're capable of. She paused, her hand on the doorknob. The kids miss Tyler. Whatever you decide about the job, don't punish them for my mistakes. After she left, Ben sat alone in the darkened living room, the portfolio untouched, on the table. The rational part of his brain noted the irony. He'd been right that first night. Claire had needed rescue, just not the kind he'd assumed. The CEO of a tech company hiding from her ex-husband, playing at being ordinary. He finally opened the portfolio. The offer was extraordinary. Salary 3 times what he made at the warehouse, comprehensive benefits, equity stake, remote work options. At the bottom, a handwritten note. This isn't because I stayed at your house. This is because you're the best person for the... Claire. Ben closed the folder, anger and opportunity warring within him. He'd been manipulated, yes. But hadn't Claire been right about one thing? He was wasting his talents. For 3 years, he'd been treading water, telling himself it was for Tyler's stability. But what kind of example was he setting? That it was okay to abandon your dreams when life got hard. His phone buzzed with a text from Claire. For what it's worth, those 3 days in your home were the most normal, most peaceful days my children have had in years. Thank you for that gift. Ben stared at the message, remembering the children's laughter, the way Liam had conquered the rocket ship, how Emma had shown Tyler her dragon drawings. Despite everything, those moments had been real. He didn't respond to the text. Instead, he went to his office and stood before the whiteboard staring at his designs. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to imagine a different future. One where he used his mind again, built things that mattered, provided for Tyler through creation rather than survival. The next morning, Ben called in sick to the warehouse. He spent the day reviewing SmartFlow's security infrastructure, looking for holes, weaknesses, points of improvement. By evening, he had filled a legal pad with notes and diagrams. His phone rang at 7. Claire's name appeared on the screen. Ben hesitated, then answered. I need to know something, he said without preamble. Was any of it real? The connection, the conversations on the porch, the way you looked at me when I offered you shelter. Silence stretched across the line, then softly, all of it. That's why this is so complicated. I came to you under false pretenses, but everything that happened was real. Ben exhaled slowly. Your company's firewall configuration is a disaster. Your authentication protocols have at least 3 exploitable weaknesses, and whoever designed your API security layer should be fired. A startled laugh escaped Claire. Is that a yes to the job offer? It's an I'll consider it, but first we need to fix your security nightmare before someone steals your intellectual property. How soon can you start? Ben thought of the warehouse of the life he'd constructed from the wreckage of his dreams. I need 2 weeks to train my replacement, and I have conditions. Name them. I work remotely 3 days a week. I pick Tyler up from school every day, and I report directly to your CTO, not to you. Done, done, and done, yeah. And Claire, where's family? Yes, no more lies, not even lies of omission. I need to trust the people I work with. I promise. The sincerity in her voice penetrated his lingering anger. Ben, Whatever she was about to say was cut off by commotion in the background. Shouting, a crash, a child's cry. Claire, what's happening? I have to go. David's here. He's... The line went dead. Ben stared at the phone, adrenaline surging through him. Without conscious thought, he grabbed his keys and headed for the door. He'd gotten Claire's address from her when she texted about returning a toy Tyler had lent to Emma. He called his neighbor Mrs. Abernathy asking if Tyler could stay with her for an hour. Then he was in his car, navigating to the wealthy enclave on the other side of town where Claire lived. The security guard at the community gate recognized Claire's name immediately and waved Ben through without question, a security lapse that would have concerned him under different circumstances. Claire's house was a modern glass and steel structure overlooking the valley. As Ben pulled into the circular driveway, he saw shattered glass on the ground near the front entrance. Two luxury cars were parked haphazardly, Claire's Tesla and a black Mercedes convertible. Ben approached the door cautiously. From inside came the sound of raised voices. He rang the doorbell, then knocked firmly when there was no response. The door swung open to reveal a man in his mid-30s wearing an expensive suit and a thunderous expression. "Who the hell are you?" "Ben Carson. I work with Claire." Ben kept his voice steady, professional. "Is everything okay in there? I heard a disturbance during our call." "Mind your own business. This is a family matter." The man, David presumably, moved to close the door. Ben wedged his foot in the gap. "I just need to make sure Claire and the kids are safe. The CEO of Smart Flow Solutions needs your protection. That's rich." David's laugh was ugly. "Tell her the lawyers will be in touch about her violation of the custody agreement." From inside, Claire appeared, her face pale but composed. "It's okay, Ben. David was just leaving." David turned to her, his handsome face twisted with anger. "This isn't over, Claire. You think you can hide behind restraining orders and security systems? I built half that company. I know every weakness." He pushed past Ben, striding to his Mercedes and peeling out of the driveway with a spray of gravel. Ben stepped into the foyer, taking in the scene. A vase lay shattered on the marble floor. A laptop had been thrown against the wall. Claire stood rigid, her arms wrapped around herself. "The kids, upstairs with Marianne, our housekeeper. They didn't see anything." Claire's voice was steady, but her hands trembled. "Thank you for coming. You didn't have to." "What happened?" "David found out about the job offered to you. Someone at the company must have leaked it." Claire ran a hand through her hair. "He says I'm replacing him, erasing his contributions to the company." "Was he part of Smart Flow? Co-founder and former CTO. That's how we met." Claire led Ben into a sleek kitchen that looked barely used. "Coffee." "Sure." Ben watched as she moved through the familiar motions of making coffee, her actions deliberate, as if focusing on the simple task helped her regain control. Was what he said true about knowing the company's weaknesses? Claire's hands stilled on the coffee grinder. "Yes, David designed our original security architecture. After the divorce, we revised it, but he knows the underlying systems better than anyone." She looked up, meeting Ben's eyes. "That's why your perspective is so valuable. You're seeing it with fresh eyes." "What exactly happened with David beyond the personal stuff?" Claire measured coffee grounds with precision. 2 years ago, he started acting erratically, paranoid, controlling. He became convinced I was undermining him at the company, turning the board against him. She pressed the start button on the coffee maker. The truth was simpler and sadder. He was self-destructing, drinking during the day, missing meetings, making costly mistakes. She paused. "And then I found evidence he was selling intellectual property to competitors." Claire's voice hardened. "I confronted him. He denied it. The board sided with me. He was forced out with a generous severance and stock options worth millions. But he blames you." In his mind, I betrayed him. The fact that he betrayed the company first is irrelevant. Claire handed Ben a mug of coffee. "Since then, it's been a cold war. He uses the children as leverage. I use legal channels to maintain boundaries. Tonight was the first time he's violated the restraining order." Ben sipped the coffee, processing this new information. The professional side of his brain was already cataloging potential security vulnerabilities, points where David's insider knowledge could be exploited. The personal side was struggling to reconcile the polished CEO before him with the vulnerable woman who had appeared on his doorstep. "He said something about custody agreements." Claire's expression tightened. "According to our arrangement, I'm supposed to notify him if the children are staying overnight somewhere else. When we stayed with you, you didn't tell him. I didn't want him tracking us there. I didn't want to put you at risk. Claire met his eyes. I was trying to protect everyone. Before Ben could respond, small footsteps pattered down the stairs. Emma appeared in the doorway, her eyes widening when she saw Ben. Mr. Carson. She ran to him, throwing her arms around his waist. Did you come for dinner? Is Tyler here too? Ben patted her back awkwardly. Not tonight, sweetheart. I just stopped by to talk to your mom about work. Emma looked between them, her expression suddenly serious beyond her years. Was Daddy here? I heard loud noises. Claire knelt to her daughter's level. Yes, Daddy stopped by. He was upset about some grown-up things, but everything's okay now. Is he coming back? Not tonight. Claire smoothed Emma's hair. How about you go tell Liam that Mr. Carson is here? He'll want to say hello. After Emma bounded away, Claire stood exhaustion evident in the slump of her shoulders. I'm sorry you got pulled into this mess. Don't be. Better I know what I'm walking into. Ben sat down his coffee mug. David could be a serious security threat to the company, especially if he's desperate or feels he has nothing to lose. That's my fear exactly. Ben made a decision then. One part professional judgment, one part something deeper he wasn't ready to name. I'll start tomorrow. Not in 2 weeks. Tomorrow. Claire's eyes widened. What about the warehouse? I'll figure it out. Right now, securing your systems is the priority. Ben pulled out his phone and began making notes. I'll need full access credentials, network diagrams, code-based permissions. As he listed technical requirements, a weight seemed to lift from Claire's shoulders. This was familiar territory for both of them. Problem-solving systems, thinking in actionable steps forward. Thank you, she said simply when he finished. Don't thank me yet. I haven't fixed anything. You showed up. That counts for something. The children burst into the kitchen, then Liam racing ahead of his sister. Mr. Carson, did you bring your robot designs? Can we build one together? Ben laughed, the tension of the evening breaking. No robots tonight, buddy, but maybe soon. As he interacted with the children, answering their excited questions and promising future visits, Ben caught Claire watching him, a complex emotion in her eyes. Gratitude mixed with something warmer, more personal. Later, as Ben prepared to leave, Claire walked him to the door. I meant what I said on the phone. Everything that happened at your house, the conversations, the connection, that was real. Ben nodded, not quite ready to fully forgive the deception, but understanding it better. I believe you. And for what it's worth, I think you're a good mother. Your kids are lucky to have someone who fights so hard to protect them. Claire's eyes glistened. Even if I sometimes make a mess of things, especially then, it's not the mistakes that define us, it's how we fix them. As Ben drove home through the quiet streets, his mind raced with everything that had transpired. In the span of 3 weeks, his carefully constructed life had been upended. Yet for the first time in years, he felt fully alive. His mind engaged, his purpose clear. Tomorrow he would begin rebuilding security systems for a company worth millions. Tonight he was just a father returning home to his son, carrying the weight of new possibilities and old wounds, navigating the delicate balance between professional opportunity and personal trust. Tôi đã viết phần 2, sự kiện thay đổi and twist đầu tiên tiếp nối trực tiếp từ phần 1. Trong phần này mối quan hệ giữa Ben và Claire phát triển khi cô cùng các con ở lại nhà anh để tránh chống cự. Khoảnh khắc tia lửa ban đầu xuất hiện khi Ben phát hiện sự quan tâm của Claire đối với thiết kế hệ thống của anh và cách họ kết nối qua những trải nghiệm chung về việc làm cha mẹ đơn thân. Twist lộn trong phần này là tiết lộ về danh tính thật của Claire. Không phải nhân viên hỗ trợ kỹ thuật như cô đã giả vờ mà là CEO của Smart Flow Solutions. Sự tiết lộ này làm thay đổi hoàn toàn động lực quyền lực giữa họ và tạo ra xung đột về sự tin tưởng. Fan kết thể hiện sự thay đổi của Ben khi anh quyết định nhận lời đề nghị làm việc tại Smart Flow, đồng thời giải quyết tình huống khẩn cấp khi David gây rối tại nhà Claire. Việc này đặt nền móng cho sự phát triển của cả mối quan hệ cá nhân lẫn chuyên môn giữa họ trong những phần tiếp theo. Tôi đã đảm bảo tính nhất quán với phần 1, sử dụng cùng phong cách viết và phát triển các nhân vật cùng mối quan hệ của họ theo dàn ý đã được phê duyệt. The call to the warehouse manager the next morning was brief but decisive. Ben explained a family emergency required his immediate resignation. He offered to train his replacement on weekends if needed, but made it clear he wouldn't be returning. By 9:00 a.m., he was set up in his home office, VPN connections established to SmartFlow's internal systems, diving deep into the digital architecture of a company he hadn't known existed a month ago. What he found confirmed his initial assessment, and worse. The security systems were full of backdoors, legacy code vulnerabilities, and authentication weaknesses that a skilled attacker could exploit. David's digital fingerprints were everywhere, along with hurried patches that had been applied after his departure. Ben worked through the day, breaking only when Tyler returned from school. He explained the new job in simple terms. He would be fixing computer security for a company while working from home most days. "Is it Claire's company?" Tyler asked, surprisingly perceptive. "Yes, how did you know?" "Emma told me her mom runs a big computer company." Tyler shrugged. "Are we going to see them again?" Ben ruffled his son's hair. "I think so, buddy. Would that be okay with you?" Tyler nodded enthusiastically. "Emma promised to teach me how to draw a fire-breathing dragon next time." That evening, Ben sent Claire a preliminary security assessment. Her response came minutes later. A calendar invitation for a video call with the executive team the following morning. The call was a stark contrast to their first meeting. This time, Ben spoke with authority, outlining critical vulnerabilities and proposing immediate remediation steps. The executives listened with growing concern as he detailed how an insider with David's knowledge could potentially access intellectual property, financial data, even employee personal information. "How quickly can these issues be addressed?" Claire asked, her CEO persona firmly in place. "The most critical vulnerabilities can be patched within 48 hours. A complete security overhaul will take weeks, possibly months." "You have whatever resources you need," Claire said. "This is now the company's top priority." Over the next 2 weeks, Ben immersed himself in SmartFlow systems. He worked remotely most days, maintaining his promise to be present for Tyler, but spent 2 days a week at the company headquarters building relationships with the engineering team and implementing security protocols. He and Claire maintained a strictly professional relationship during business hours. She was the CEO. He was a senior security consultant solving critical problems. But in the evenings, text messages would sometimes appear on his phone. Updates about the children, questions about Tyler, small moments of connection that bridged their complicated history. The children had play dates supervised by Claire's housekeeper. Ben and Claire carefully avoided being alone together, both aware of the unresolved tension between them. Not just the lingering effects of her deception, but the undeniable personal connection that had formed during those 3 days in his home. 3 weeks into the security overhaul, Ben's system flagged an attempted intrusion. Someone was probing SmartFlow's networks looking for ways in. The attack signature matched patterns Ben had theorized David might use. He called Claire immediately. "We've got an attempted breach. It looks like David." Claire's voice was tight. "How bad?" "They didn't get in. My new protocols caught it, but they'll try again." "What do we need to do?" "I need to come in tonight. This requires physical access to your server infrastructure." An hour later, Ben was in SmartFlow's server room implementing additional security measures while Claire paced nearby, her usual composure fractured by concern. "If David succeeds," she began. "He won't." Ben's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Not on my watch." As the night deepened, they worked side by side, Ben securing systems, Claire providing necessary authorizations and coordinating with the off-site security team. Around midnight, they took a break, moving to Claire's office where she ordered in food. "Why is he doing this?" Ben asked as they ate. "He's already wealthy from the severance and stock options. What more does he want?" Claire set down her fork. "It's not about money, it's about vindication. David believes I stole the company from him. In his mind, destroying SmartFlow would prove he was essential all along. That's twisted logic. Wounded pride often is." Claire looked out at the city lights below. "We built this company together. 10 years of our lives. When it all fell apart, the marriage, his role here, something broke in him. He can't move forward. So he's determined to pull everything backward instead." Ben studied her profile, seeing both the confident CEO and the vulnerable woman he'd met that first night. "You still care about him?" "I care about what he was, what we built together, what he could have been." Claire turned to him. "Is that strange?" "No, it's human." Ben thought of his own ex-wife, how even after everything he sometimes wondered where she was, if she ever thought of Tyler. We don't stop caring just because someone hurts us. We just learn to care differently. Claire's eyes held his for a long moment. Then her phone buzzed, an alert from the security system. They both turned back to the monitors, personal revelations set aside as they confronted the digital threat. By morning, they had successfully reinforced the company's defenses. The attempted intrusion had been blocked logs preserved for potential legal action. Ben had implemented a deception environment, a honeypot, that would track any future attempts and gather evidence. As the sun rose over the city skyline, casting golden light across Claire's office, Ben found himself standing at the window, exhaustion and accomplishment warring within him. "We did it," Claire said, joining him. "Thank you. It's what you hired me for." "No," Claire touched his arm lightly. "What I hired you for was your technical expertise. What you gave tonight was something more. Commitment, determination. You protected not just systems, but people." Ben turned to face her. "I build things, Claire. I fix them when they break. It's what I do." "Is that all this is to you? A system that needed fixing?" The question hung between them, layered with meanings. Before Ben could answer, his phone rang. Tyler's school. His son was in the nurse's office with a fever. "I have to go," Ben said, already gathering his things. "Of course, family first. Always." Claire stepped back, professional boundaries reinstated. "We'll continue this discussion later." Ben nodded, but as he hurried to his car, he wondered what exactly this discussion entailed. The security situation, their personal connection, or the complicated intersection of both. Tyler's fever was high enough that Ben took him to the pediatrician who diagnosed a minor throat infection and prescribed antibiotics. By evening, Tyler was resting comfortably on the couch watching cartoons while Ben worked nearby on his laptop but monitoring SmartFlow systems remotely. A text arrived from Claire. "How's Tyler better? Antibiotics working. Should be back to normal in a day or two. Emma's been asking when they can play again. She finished that dragon drawing." Ben smiled, imagining Emma's serious concentration as she worked on her art. "Tyler's been talking about it too. Maybe next weekend if he's feeling better." "Sounds perfect. And Ben, thank you again for last night. The board has approved full funding for your security initiative." The conversation shifted to professional matters, budget allocations, staffing needs, implementation timelines. It was safer territory, clearly defined, unlike the nebulous personal connection that neither of them seemed ready to address directly. As Ben put Tyler to bed that night, his son asked sleepily, "Are you and Miss Claire going to get married?" The question caught Ben off guard. "What? Nobody. We work together. She's my boss, actually." "Emma says her mom smiles different when she talks about you, like in princess movies." Ben tucked the blanket around his son's shoulders. "I think Emma has a big imagination, just like someone else I know." "But you like Miss Claire, right? And Emma and Liam." "Yes, I like them. They're good people." Tyler yawned. "That's good. I like having more people to like." The simple wisdom of his 8-year-old son stayed with Ben as he returned to his office. Did he like Claire? The question was more complicated than Tyler could understand. He respected her professional acumen, admired her dedication to her children, was drawn to her resilience. But liking required trust, and trust had been damaged by her initial deception. Yet even as he acknowledged the breach of trust, Ben recognized his own role in their complicated dynamic. He had cast himself as rescuer that first night, making assumptions about her needs, her situation. Perhaps her deception had been partly a response to his own need to be needed. The next morning, Ben received an urgent call from Alexandra SmartFlow's CTO. Another breach attempt had been detected overnight, more sophisticated this time, targeting specific product development servers. "It's escalating," Alexandra said grimly. "We need to lock this down now." Ben spent the day implementing additional security measures, coordinating with SmartFlow's IT team to harden critical systems. Tyler, still recovering, sat in Ben's home office drawing spaceships, while his father worked occasionally, asking questions that Ben answered absently, his focus on the digital battle unfolding. By evening, the immediate threat had been contained, but Ben's concern had deepened. The attack patterns were evolving, becoming more targeted. Whoever was behind them, presumably David, was getting desperate, taking greater risks. Ben called Claire. "We need to talk. This isn't just about corporate espionage anymore. The attack patterns suggest personal targeting. Your email, your calendar, your personal files." Claire's voice was steady, but Ben detected an undercurrent of fear. "Can they access my home systems?" The children's information. Potentially, I need to check your home network, strengthen your personal security. When ishto? Now, tonight. An hour later, Ben arrived at Claire's modernist home security equipment in hand. He found her in the kitchen, helping the children with homework at the island counter. The domesticity of the scene struck him. Powerful CEO Claire Anderson, helping with multiplication tables and spelling words. Ben, Liam spotted him, first jumping from his stool. Did you bring robot parts? Not tonight, buddy. Just some boring computer stuff. Emma studied him with solemn eyes. Is it because of Daddy Mom's been checking the alarm system extra? Claire and Ben exchanged glances. Just some work things, Claire said smoothly. Why don't you two finish your homework in the study? I'll be in to check it soon. After the children left, Claire's composed facade cracked slightly. They're perceptive, too perceptive sometimes. Kids usually are. Ben set his equipment on the counter. Show me your home office and network setup. Claire led him to a sleek home office overlooking the valley. Unlike Ben's cluttered workspace, everything here was minimalist and precisely arranged. The technology, however, was top tier. Multiple monitors, high-end equipment, dedicated server rack. David set most of this up, Claire explained. After the separation, I had it checked for surveillance equipment, but the basic network architecture is still his design. Ben nodded grimly. That's what I was afraid of. He knows this system intimately. For the next several hours, Ben worked methodically, identifying vulnerabilities, installing security patches, and setting up monitoring systems. Claire brought him coffee, then worked quietly at her desk while he concentrated. Around 10, with the children asleep and the most critical security updates implemented, they took a break on the terrace. The night was clear, stars visible despite the city lights below. Is it fixed? Claire asked. Not fixed, improved. Security is never fixed. It's an ongoing process. Ben leaned against the railing. But your home systems are significantly more secure now. I've isolated your personal and family data on a separate network with enhanced encryption. Thank you. Claire stood beside him, close but not touching. I keep thinking about what you said that first night, about tacos and duct tape and knowing when to start over. Not my most profound moment, but true. Sometimes starting over is the only way forward. Claire turned to face him. I started over after David rebuilt my life, refocused on the children and the company. I thought I had it all under control. And now I realize control is an illusion. David can still reach in and disrupt everything I've built. My company, my home, my children's sense of security. Her voice caught. I hate feeling vulnerable again. Ben understood vulnerability. He'd lived with it for 3 years. Financial vulnerability, emotional vulnerability, the constant fear that he wasn't enough for Tyler, that one mistake could unravel everything. Vulnerability isn't weakness, he said quietly. It's just the price of having something worth protecting. Claire's eyes met his, a moment of perfect understanding passing between them. Then her phone buzzed, an alert from the new security system Ben had installed. Someone was attempting to access her home network remotely. They moved quickly back to the office where Ben tracked the intrusion attempt in real time. He's trying to get into your personal email. Smart. That would give him access to reset passwords for other accounts. Can you stop it? Already done. The new system blocked him automatically. Ben's fingers flew across the keyboard. But now we have something better, a digital fingerprint. Evidence. Claire leaned over his shoulder, watching the screen. Enough for legal action? Maybe. Let me trace the connection. Ben followed the digital trail, his focus absolute. After several minutes of intense concentration, he sat back. Got it. The attack came from David's home IP address. It's him, Claire. We can prove it now. The relief on her face was palpable. This changes everything. With this evidence, I can get a stronger restraining order, maybe even press criminal charges. One step at a time. First, let's document everything properly. I'll work with your legal team tomorrow. Claire placed her hand on his shoulder, the touch light but warm. You've done more than fix my security systems, Ben. You've given me back a sense of control. Ben covered her hand with his own, the gesture automatic. That's what engineers do. We build systems that work the way they're supposed to. The moment lengthened, charged with unspoken possibilities. Then Ben gently removed her hand and stood. I should go, it's late. And Tyler will be up early. Claire nodded, professional boundaries reinstated. Of course, I'll have legal reach out to you tomorrow. As Ben gathered his equipment, Claire walked him to the door. Ben, she said as he stepped onto the porch, I know our beginning was complicated, but I'm grateful for how it's unfolding now. So am I. And despite everything, the deception, the professional complications, the unresolved tension, Ben realized he meant it. 1 month into his new role at SmartFlow, Ben's life had transformed. The cramped home office now featured cutting-edge equipment, 3 ultra-wide monitors, a custom-built workstation, and enterprise-grade security hardware that Claire had insisted on providing. Even more significant was the change in Ben himself. The defeated warehouse manager was gone, replaced by a man whose mind once again crackled with technical challenges and creative solutions. Tyler noticed the difference immediately. Dad, you laugh more now, he observed one morning as Ben made dinosaur-shaped pancakes, a tradition borrowed from Claire's children. Ben had secured David's digital fingerprints on the attacks, providing Claire with evidence for strengthened legal protection. The immediate threat contained, they established a comfortable routine. Ben worked remotely most days, visited SmartFlow headquarters twice weekly, and the families spent occasional weekends together. Picnics at the park, movie nights, science museum excursions that delighted all 3 children. Professionally, Ben's security overhaul impressed everyone at SmartFlow. His innovative approach to intrusion detection had already prevented 2 potentially devastating attacks. The board approved his proposal for a dedicated security division with Ben as director, a position that came with substantial stock options, and a salary that had allowed him to pay off his father's medical bills and establish a proper college fund for Tyler. You've exceeded every expectation, Claire told him during their weekly status meeting, her professional demeanor softened by genuine admiration. The team respects you. The systems are more secure than they have ever been. I'm just doing what I was hired to do. No, you're doing much more. Claire closed the folder between them. Speaking of which, my father's birthday dinner is this Saturday. The children would love if you and Tyler could join us. Ben hesitated. Their professional relationship had solidified into mutual respect, but personal boundaries remained carefully maintained. Family gatherings represented a shift he wasn't certain he was ready for. It's not a big deal, Claire added, reading his hesitation. Just dinner at my parents' house. Dad was an engineer too, Air Force, then Boeing. He'd love to meet you. I'm not sure if that's, please. Emma specifically asked if Mr. Ben and Tyler could come. She's drawn a special birthday card that apparently requires Tyler's artistic input on dragons. Ben smiled despite himself. Well, when you put it that way, how can I refuse expert dragon consultation? Saturday evening found Ben and Tyler arriving at an elegant but comfortable home in the established part of town. Claire greeted them at the door, looking different somehow. More relaxed in casual clothes, her hair loose around her shoulders. You made it. Come in. Everyone's in the backyard. The Anderson family gathering was warm and unpretentious. Claire's father, Robert, a tall man with kind eyes and calloused hands, immediately engaged Ben in conversation about aircraft systems design. Her mother, Margaret, fussed over Tyler, making sure he had enough food and introducing him to various cousins and family friends. So you're the security genius Claire won't stop talking about, Robert said, handing Ben a beer as they stood by the grill. She tells me you saved the company from that snake-in-the-grass ex-son-in-law of mine. Ben nearly choked on his drink. She talks about me constantly, says you see systems differently, not just the technical components, but how people interact with them. That's real engineering, son. Across the yard, Claire was helping the children set up a water balloon game, laughing as Liam accidentally soaked himself. She caught Ben watching and smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that made something shift in his chest. Later, as twilight settled over the gathering, Claire's mother cornered Ben by the dessert table. You know, Claire hasn't brought anyone to family events since the divorce. Oh, we're not. I work for her company. We're colleagues. Margaret raised an eyebrow. Colleagues. That's why my granddaughter has drawn about 50 pictures of your family and hers living in a castle together. Ben felt his face warm. Kids have active imaginations. Indeed they do, Margaret patted his arm. But they also see things clearly sometimes. Things adults complicate with history and hesitation. As the evening wound down, Ben found himself on the porch swing with Claire watching the children chase fireflies across the lawn. Her father had insisted on driving Tyler and her kids to get ice cream, giving them an unexpected moment alone. "Your family is wonderful," Ben said, the gentle sway of the swing lulling him into relaxation. "They like you, Dad especially. He hasn't talked engineering with anyone so enthusiastically in years. He reminds me of my own father. Same practical wisdom, same hands that have built things." Claire's expression softened. "How is your dad doing? You mentioned the new treatments were helping." "Better. The additional insurance coverage through SmartFlow made a huge difference. He's even talking about fishing again." Ben looked at her profile in the fading light. "Thank you for that. Not just the job, but understanding about the flexible schedule so I can take him to appointments. Family comes first. Always." Claire's voice carried a weight of conviction. "That's something I had to learn the hard way." With David, she nodded, her eyes on the children in the distance. "The company was everything to both of us. We worked 18-hour days, missed birthdays, vacations. When Emma was 4, she got sick at preschool, and neither of us picked up our phones because we were in crucial investor meetings. That must have been difficult. It was a wake-up call. I changed after that, started creating boundaries. David didn't. He thought my new priorities meant I wasn't committed enough." Claire turned to face him. "That's why I value how you've structured your work around Tyler. It's the right choice even when it's hard." Something shifted between them in that moment, a deepening understanding, a recognition of shared values. Ben found himself wanting to reach for her hand to acknowledge the connection that had been building gradually between them. Before he could move, headlights swept across the yard as Robert's car returned, children tumbling out with ice cream-stained grins and excited chatter. The moment passed, but something had changed. In the weeks that followed, the careful professional boundaries began to blur. Text messages about work evolved into conversations about the children, books they'd read, challenges they faced. Claire started dropping by Ben's house occasionally, ostensibly for the children to play, but lingering for dinner, for conversation on the porch after the kids were asleep. Ben found himself looking forward to these evenings, to the way Claire's professional facade melted away in his home, revealing the woman he had first met. Thoughtful, vulnerable, surprisingly funny. One rainy Saturday, with the children building an elaborate blanket fort in the living room, Claire helped Ben prepare dinner in his kitchen. "I never asked, where did you learn to cook?" she asked, deftly chopping vegetables beside him. "Necessity at first. After Sarah left, it was just Tyler and me, and a kid can only eat so many frozen pizzas." Ben adjusted the heat under the skillet. "Then it became therapeutic, something I could control when everything else felt chaotic." "I understand that. After the divorce, I took up pottery. Something about physically reshaping clay when my life felt like it was crumbling." "Are you any good?" Claire laughed, the sound warming the small kitchen. "Terrible, absolutely dreadful. My children kindly pretend the misshapen mugs I make are artistic." Ben grinned, enjoying this glimpse of imperfection from the normally polished CEO. "I'd like to see these artistic creations sometime. Be careful what you wish for. I might subject you to the entire collection." Their eyes met over the cutting board, shared laughter fading into something warmer, more intimate. Ben found himself noticing details he'd tried to ignore. The curve of her smile, the way her hair fell across her forehead, the light freckles across her nose, visible only up close. The moment was broken by Tyler's excited call from the living room. The fort was complete and required immediate inspection. That night, after Claire and her children had gone home, Ben sat in his office staring at the whiteboard where he'd been mapping potential security enhancements. Instead of focusing on the technical challenge, his mind kept returning to Claire, not the CEO who signed his paychecks, but the woman who laughed in his kitchen, who understood the value he placed on being present for his son, who had gradually become an essential part of his life. The realization both exhilarated and terrified him. His professional success depended on maintaining appropriate boundaries with his employer. And Tyler, who had already lost one parent, had grown attached to Claire and her children. If things went wrong, Ben pushed the thoughts aside, focusing instead on the security architecture diagram before him. Relationships were unpredictable, messy. Systems at least could be understood, controlled, secured. 2 days later, Ben received an urgent message from Claire asking him to come to headquarters immediately. The tone was unusual. Gee, no explanation, just a request for his presence as soon as possible. He found Claire in her office with Alexandra, the CTO, and Marcus, the company's lead counsel. Their grave expressions immediately put him on alert. What's happened? Claire nodded to Marcus, who slid a tablet across the table. We've discovered a significant data breach. Someone has been systematically accessing our development server, specifically the files for Project Nexus. Ben took the tablet, quickly scanning the logs. When did this start? That's the concerning part, Alexandra said. We can trace it back 3 weeks, but it may have been happening longer without detection. Ben frowned, reviewing the access patterns. This doesn't make sense. These breaches originated from within our security perimeter using authenticated credentials. Exactly. Claire's voice was tight. Someone with inside access has been stealing our most valuable intellectual property, the same project you have been working to secure. The implication hung in the air, unspoken but clear. Ben looked up, meeting Claire's eyes. You think I'm involved? I don't, Claire said firmly. But the board is concerned. The access times correspond closely with your remote work schedule. The breaches occur primarily on days you are not physically in the office. Ben felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. That's circumstantial at best. Anyone could have established that pattern by observing when I'm in the building. We know, Alexandra interjected. That's why we're discussing this with you directly rather than involving external investigators. Ben turned to Claire. Do you trust me? Her answer came without hesitation. Completely. Then let me find who's behind this. Give me access to the full system logs, not just these summaries. I need to see the raw data. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. The board has suggested bringing in an independent security firm. With all due respect, Marcus, an external team, would take weeks to understand our architecture. Ben leaned forward. I can start now. Claire studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Give him everything he needs, Alexandra. Ben has full authority on this investigation. Back in his office, Ben immersed himself in the system logs, searching for patterns that might reveal the true source of the breach. Hours passed as he tracked digital footprints through SmartFlow's complex network architecture. Just after midnight, a pattern emerged, subtle but unmistakable. The breaches weren't merely coinciding with his remote work schedule. They were precisely timed to his login sessions, as if someone was using his authenticated connection as cover for their own activities. Ben called Claire despite the late hour. I found something. The intruder is piggybacking on my secure connection, using it as a smokescreen while they access the servers. Can you identify them? Not yet, but I've narrowed it down to someone with physical access to our headquarters' primary network. It has to be an insider. Claire's voice was grim. That's what I was afraid of. How soon can you come in? First thing tomorrow. I'll drop Tyler at school and head straight there. Thank you, Ben. And I'm sorry about earlier. I never doubted you. I know. And despite the professional crisis unfolding, Ben felt a surge of warmth at her unwavering confidence in him. The next morning, Ben arrived at SmartFlow headquarters to find Claire already in the security operations center she'd established based on his recommendations. She looked as if she hadn't slept. Dark circles beneath her eyes, hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail. You look terrible, he said without thinking. A tired smile ghosted across her face. Just what every woman wants to hear first thing in the morning. Sorry, I know what you meant. Claire handed him a coffee. I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about who might be behind this. We've implemented every security measure you recommended. How could someone still getting through? Ben took a long drink of the coffee, organizing his thoughts. Because they're using legitimate credentials. They're not breaking in. They're walking through the front door with a key. For the next several hours, Ben set digital traps throughout the system, creating invisible tripwires that would alert them when the intruder next accessed the servers. Claire worked beside him, her technical knowledge impressing him once again. This was no figurehead CEO, but a woman who understood the code and architecture underlying her company's success. You never talk about how SmartFlow started, Ben said during a brief break. The company history on the website mentions you and David as co-founders, but not how you got the idea. Claire leaned back in her chair, stretching tired muscles. It was my concept originally. I was working at Meridian Tech. Wait, Meridian? I worked there too. Different divisions probably. I was in cloud infrastructure from 2012 to 2015. Ben stared at her. I was in security architecture during the same period. How did we never cross paths? Claire shrugged. Big companies, siloed departments. Anyway, I saw how inefficient the manufacturing supply chains were for our hardware components. David was in network engineering. We met at a company hackathon, fell in love over late-night coding sessions and takeout. Romantic, Ben offered. It was in its way. We both understood the devotion tech requires. She smiled wistfully. We developed the initial SmartFlow concept as a side project, then left Meridian when we secured our first round of funding. Ben processed this new information. So you were at Meridian when the Jenkins breach happened, the authentication hack. Yes, that was a nightmare. The entire security team worked around the clock for weeks. I know, I was one of them. Ben smiled ruefully. My first marriage didn't survive that particular crisis. I remember the security director, older guy crew cut, always wore the same blue shirt. Jim Nolan taught me everything I know about crisis management. Claire studied him with new appreciation. We probably passed each other in the hallways a dozen times. Ships in the night. Their eyes met a moment of connection in recognizing how close their paths had come to intersecting years earlier. Then Ben's laptop chimed. One of his digital tripwires had been triggered. We've got activity, he said, fingers flying across the keyboard. Someone's accessing the server now. Claire moved to look over his shoulder, her hand resting lightly on his back as they watched the intrusion unfold in real time. Can you trace it? Working on it. Ben isolated the connection following it through the network. It's coming from... That's not possible. What? The executive floor, specifically. Ben looked up at Claire, his expression grave. Your office, Claire paled. That's impossible. I'm here with you. Let's go. Ben was already moving toward the door Claire closed behind him. The executive floor was quiet, most employees having gone home hours ago. Claire's office door was closed, but light spilled from beneath it. Ben motioned for Claire to stay back, then quietly approached the door. Through the glass panel, he could see a figure at Claire's computer. Not David as he had half expected, but Alexandra, the CTO. She was copying files onto an external drive, her movements quick and practiced. Claire gasped softly beside him, having moved forward, despite his warning. Alexandra's head snapped up at the sound. For a frozen moment, the three stared at each other through the glass. Then Alexandra lunged for her bag, the external drive still in her hand. Ben pushed the door open. Alexandra, stop. The CTO froze, her normally composed face twisted with emotion. Not guilt, but anger. You don't understand. Neither of you do. Then explain it, Claire said, her voice remarkably steady despite the betrayal unfolding before her. Alexandra's laugh was bitter. Explain to the golden girl who's never had to fight for recognition, who had everything handed to her because of her family connections. Claire flinched. That's not true. I built this company from nothing. You built it with David, and then you pushed him out and took all the credit. Alexandra's grip tightened on the drive. He deserves to know what you're developing. It was his vision, too. Understanding dawned on Ben. You're working with David. Alexandra's silence was confirmation enough. How long, Claire asked quietly, since you forced him out? He was brilliant, Claire, the most innovative mind I've ever worked with, and you discarded him like he was nothing. Alexandra's voice cracked. He was selling our intellectual property to competitors. Claire said, an edge entering her voice. He betrayed everything we built. He made one mistake after years of brilliance, years of building this company alongside you. Alexandra's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and I watched you systematically erase his contributions, claim his ideas as your own. Ben moved carefully toward Alexandra, keeping his voice calm. Whatever you believe about the past, this isn't the way to address it. You're committing corporate espionage. That's a federal crime. I don't care anymore. Alexandra gestured toward Ben with her free hand. And now you've brought in his replacement. Another man you can control who follows you around like a lovesick puppy. Ben felt Claire stiffen beside him at the accusation, but kept his focus on Alexandra. This isn't about me or about Claire and David. This is about your choices right now. Hand over the drive, Alexandra. For a moment, it seemed she might comply. Then her expression hardened. No, David deserves to know what's on this drive. It's his intellectual property as much as Claire's. Before either of them could react, Alexandra shoved past them and ran toward the stairwell. Ben started to follow, but Claire caught his arm. "Let her go. We have the evidence on camera. Security will stop her at the exit." But Alexandra didn't head for the exit. Instead, they heard her footsteps ascending toward the roof. Claire and Ben exchanged alarmed glances, then raced after her, taking the stairs two at a time. They burst onto the roof to find Alexandra standing near the edge. The wind whipped her hair around her face, the external drive clutched in her hand. "Alexandra, please," Claire called, moving slowly forward. "Step away from the edge. Whatever has happened, we can talk about it." "There's nothing to talk about. It's too late." Alexandra's voice was eerily calm now. "I've already sent most of the files to David." This was just the final piece. Ben's mind raced, assessing the situation. Alexandra wasn't threatening suicide. She was using their concern as a distraction, buying time. "You've been feeding information to David for months, haven't you?" he said, "using my security credentials as cover." Alexandra's slight smile confirmed his suspicion. "You made it so easy. Your predictable schedule, your remote access patterns, child's play to piggyback on your connection." "But why?" Claire asked, genuine confusion in her voice. "You've been with SmartFlow from the beginning. You have equity, a leadership position." "Because I love him." Alexandra's composure cracked. "I've always loved him, even when he was with you. He promised we would rebuild together, create something better than SmartFlow." Understanding washed over Claire's face. "You and David, during our marriage," Alexandra's silence was answer enough. Ben watched the pain flash across Claire's features. Not just professional betrayal, but personal as well. In that moment, he wanted nothing more than to shield her from this new hurt, to stand between her and the cruel revelations being flung like weapons. "Whatever David promised you," he said to Alexandra, "he's using you just like he used Claire. You don't know him." Alexandra's hand tightened around the drive. "Neither of you do." "Not really," Claire said, her voice stronger now. "I knew him well enough to recognize the pattern. He finds brilliant, capable women, makes them feel special, needed. Then he uses their talents while taking the credit." Something flickered in Alexandra's eyes. Doubt, perhaps. Ben pressed the advantage. "Think about it, Alexandra. Has David ever acknowledged your contributions publicly? Has he given you credit for the information you have provided? Or does he present it as his own insights, his own discoveries?" Alexandra's confident posture faltered slightly. "He's waiting for the right moment. When we have everything, we'll launch together. Just like he promised to acknowledge my contributions when we started SmartFlow," Claire asked softly. "I spent 3 years as the woman behind the curtain while David took the spotlight. Don't make my mistake." Ben could see the conflict in Alexandra's face, loyalty warring with dawning recognition. He moved carefully closer. "Whatever you decide about David, about your future, this moment right now determines everything. You're facing industrial espionage charges. That drive in your hand is evidence." For a long, tense moment, Alexandra stood motionless, the wind tugging at her clothes, the city lights spread below them like a carpet of stars. Then slowly she extended her hand, offering the drive to Ben. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered. "I just wanted him to see me, to value me the way he valued Claire." As Ben took the drive, Claire stepped forward and embraced her CTO, this woman who had betrayed her professionally and personally. "I know exactly how that feels," she said softly. The aftermath unfolded in a blur of security personnel, emergency board calls, and legal consultations. Alexandra was escorted from the building, her access revoked, but no charges filed yet. Claire wanted time to assess the full extent of the breach before making decisions about prosecution. Hours later, Ben and Claire sat alone in the Security Operations Center, reviewing the damage. The breach was extensive. Months of development work, strategic plans, client information. "He has enough to replicate most of Project Nexus," Ben said, fatigue making his voice rough. With Alexandra's help, he could bring a competing product to market within months. Claire nodded, her face drawn with exhaustion and betrayal. "I trusted her completely. She was my right hand, my friend. I thought—" Her voice trailed off. Ben reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "You couldn't have known." "I should have. The signs were there. Her defense of David even after he left, her resistance to some of your security measures." Claire shook her head. I was blind because I didn't want to see. What will you do now? Claire stretched in professional resolve, replacing vulnerability. Call an emergency board meeting. Inform our investors before rumors start. Accelerate Project Nexus development to beat David to market. And Alexandra, that depends on her. If she cooperates, helps us understand exactly what David has, maybe we can avoid criminal charges. Ben nodded, understanding the complex balance Claire was trying to strike. Accountability without destruction, justice without vengeance. You should go home, Claire said softly. Tyler will be wondering where you are. The mention of his son jolted Ben back to his personal responsibilities. He'd been so consumed by the crisis that he'd lost track of time. Mrs. Abernathy is watching him, but you're right. I should get back. Within, Claire squeezed his hand before releasing it. Thank you, Ben, for everything today. Just doing my job. No. Claire looked up at him, exhaustion momentarily giving way to something warmer. You did much more than your job. You stood beside me through all of this. It means a great deal. The drive home gave Ben time to process the day's revelations. Alexandra's betrayal, David's continued attempts to undermine Claire, the complex web of personal and professional relationships that had led to this crisis. And beneath it all, his growing feelings for Claire, feelings that complicated their professional relationship, that placed both of them in vulnerable positions. Mrs. Abernathy had put Tyler to bed hours ago, leaving a note that the boy had finished his homework and had been worried about his dad working so late. Ben checked on his sleeping son, then collapsed on the living room couch, too exhausted to even make it to his bedroom. His phone buzzed with a text from Claire. Home safe, yes. Tyler's asleep. You just leaving the office now. Board meeting scheduled for 7 a.m. Ben hesitated, then typed, Are you okay? The response took longer this time. No, but I will be. Today brought back a lot of memories. History repeating itself. You're stronger now. Wiser. I still trusted the wrong person. Ben stared at the screen, wishing he could erase her pain, shield her from the doubts that must be crowding in. Trust isn't weakness, Claire. It's courage. 3 dots appeared as she typed, disappeared, then appeared again. Thank you for being someone I can trust. The simple message warmed him, easing some of the day's tension. Always. Ben slept fitfully that night, his dreams filled with fragments of the day's events. Alexandra on the roof edge, Claire's face when she realized the extent of the betrayal, the vulnerable moment when she'd admitted she wasn't okay. He woke to his phone ringing, Claire calling at 6:30 a.m. I need you at the board meeting, she said without preamble. They'll have technical questions about the breach that I can't answer. Of course, I'll drop Tyler at school and head right in. Thank you, her voice softened slowly. How are you this morning? The question surprised him. In the midst of her professional crisis, she was checking on his well-being. I'm fine. More concerned about you and the board meeting. It won't be pleasant, but I've survived worse. A pause, then Ben, about what Alexandra said yesterday about you being someone I can control. Claire, you don't need to. I do. I need you to know that's not how I see you, not how I've ever seen you. Her voice grew more certain. You're my equal. In many ways, you're what I aspire to be, someone who balances professional excellence with personal integrity. The words touched something deep in Ben, a need for recognition he hadn't fully acknowledged. Thank you for saying that. It's the truth. I'll see you at the office. The board meeting was as difficult as Claire had predicted. Questions about security protocols, concerns about market implications, barely veiled accusations about Claire's judgment in trusting Alexandra. Through it all, Claire remained composed, accepting responsibility, while outlining clear steps forward. Ben provided technical details about the breach, explained the security enhancements already implemented, and assured the board that additional protections were being deployed immediately. Several board members seemed ready to blame him as well, questioning whether his security systems had been adequate. With respect, Ben said firmly, the breach wasn't a failure of technology but of human trust. No security system can prevent an authorized user from misusing their legitimate access. That's why we've now implemented additional verification protocols and segregated access controls. Claire shot him a grateful look as the questioning moved on to financial implications. By meeting's end, the board had reluctantly accepted Claire's plan: accelerate Project Nexus development, prepare for potential market competition, and consult with legal counsel about options regarding both Alexandra and David. As the board members filed out, Claire remained seated, the weight of leadership evident in the set of her shoulders. Ben stayed as well, gathering his notes, but in no hurry to leave her alone. That went better than expected, he offered once they were alone. Claire's smile was weary. Only because you were here. They trust your technical assessment more than my leadership right now. That's not true. They're rattled, but they still believe in you. Before Claire could respond, her assistant appeared in the doorway. Miss Anderson, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's an urgent call. It's Marianne from your home. Claire's expression immediately shifted to alarm as she took the call. Marianne, what's wrong? Her face paled as she listened. When are they all right? Another pause. I'm leaving now. Call Dr. Benson. Tell him we're coming. She ended the call, already gathering her things. Liam collapsed at home. High fever, difficulty breathing. Marianne's taking him to the hospital. I'll drive you, Ben said immediately, seeing the fear in her eyes. You're in no state. For once, Claire didn't argue, merely nodded and followed him to the parking garage. In the car, Claire made calls to Emma's school, arranging for her to be picked up by her grandparents, to the pediatrician, providing medical history to her assistant, canceling the day's meetings. Her voice remained steady, but her hands trembled as she clutched her phone. He has asthma, she explained between calls. It's usually well controlled, but infections can trigger severe episodes. Last time, her voice caught, last time he ended up in intensive care. Ben reached across the console, briefly squeezing her hand. He'll be okay. We'll get there fast. At the hospital, Claire transformed into a force of nature. Efficient, authoritative brooking, no delays. Within minutes, they were escorted to the pediatric emergency department where Liam lay on a bed, small and pale, an oxygen mask over his face. Marianne, the housekeeper, stood nearby, visibly relieved when Claire arrived. Pneumonia, they think, Marianne said quietly. Fever came on suddenly this morning. Claire moved immediately to her son's side, stroking his hair back from his forehead. Hey, buddy, Mom's here now. Liam's eyes fluttered open, recognition bringing a small smile beneath the mask. He lifted his hand weakly and Claire took it, holding it against her cheek. Ben hung back, not wanting to intrude on the intimate moment, but Liam spotted him and his eyes brightened slightly. He gestured weakly and Ben stepped forward. Hey, Rocket Man, Ben said softly, using the nickname he'd given Liam after the boy had conquered the playground climbing structure. Giving everyone a scare, huh? Liam nodded slightly, then closed his eyes again, the brief interaction having exhausted him. A doctor entered, introducing herself as Dr. Reynolds, pediatric pulmonologist. Claire straightened her CEO persona, settling around her like armor. Let's step outside to talk, the doctor suggested, leading them to a small consultation room. The prognosis was concerning, but not dire. Pneumonia complicated by Liam's asthma. He would need to be admitted, receive intravenous antibiotics, and remain under observation for at least 48 hours. With aggressive treatment, children typically respond well, Dr. Reynolds assured them. But I won't minimize the seriousness. His oxygen levels are lower than I'd like. Claire nodded, absorbing the information with outward calm. What's our next step? We're moving him to the pediatric ward now. The respiratory therapist will be by shortly to begin treatments. The first 24 hours are critical. As they returned to Liam's bedside, Claire maintained her composed facade. Only the tightness around her eyes betrayed her fear as she watched the nurses prepare to transfer her son. I should call Emma, she said softly. Explain why I won't be home tonight. I'll sit with Liam while you do, Ben offered. He won't be alone, not even for a minute. Gratitude flashed across Claire's face. Thank you. While Claire stepped away to make the call, Ben sat beside Liam's bed, gently holding the boy's small hand. The child's breathing was labored, even with oxygen, support his chest rising and falling in an irregular rhythm that twisted something in Ben's heart. Your mom's going to be right back, when he said softly. I'm staying right here with you. Liam's eyes opened briefly, a question in them, despite his exhaustion. Tyler, he managed through the mask. Ben smiled, touched that even now Liam was thinking of his friend. He's at school. I'll tell him you're being super brave. He'll be really proud of you. Liam gave a tiny nod before drifting back to sleep, his hand still trustingly in Ben's. In that moment, looking down at this child who had become so important to him over the past months, Ben realized how completely his life had intertwined with Claire's family. These weren't just his employer's children anymore. They were kids he cared about deeply, who mattered to him in a way he hadn't expected or planned for. When Claire returned, her composed expression had slipped, revealing the terrified mother beneath the CEO exterior. Emma's upset. She wants to come to the hospital, but my parents think it's better if she stays with them tonight. What do you think? Claire sank into the chair beside him. I don't know. Part of me wants her here where I can see her hold her. But seeing Liam like this would frighten her. What about tomorrow? Tyler could come with me to visit. Might help both Emma and Liam to have their friends here. Claire looked at him with naked gratitude. You'd do that? Of course, Ben hesitated. Then added, Claire, you don't have to do this alone. I'm here for whatever you need. The simple offer broke through her remaining composure. Tears filled her eyes, and she covered her face with her hands. Ben moved instinctively, pulling her against his chest, one arm around her shoulders while his other hand still held Liam's. He's going to be okay, Ben murmured against her hair. He's strong like his mom. Claire allowed herself a brief moment of vulnerability, drawing strength from his embrace, then straightened, wiping her eyes. I'm sorry, it's just been today of all days. Don't apologize. Not for being human. A small smile touched her lips. Is that another Ben Carson philosophy, like tacos and duct tape? Absolutely. Right up there with always bring backup batteries and never underestimate a child's ability to find mud. The weak joke earned a genuine if watery smile. Thank you for being here. For everything. The moment was interrupted as nurses arrived to transfer Liam to the pediatric ward. Claire immediately refocused on her son, helping arrange his beloved stuffed dinosaur beside him on the gurney, murmuring reassurances as they moved through the hospital corridors. The pediatric ward was brightly decorated, but couldn't disguise its serious purpose. Liam was settled into a room with monitoring equipment, the beeping of machines creating a rhythmic backdrop to their worry. Hours passed. Ben arranged for Mrs. Abernathy to pick up Tyler from school and explain the situation. He called Claire's assistant to update the SmartFlow executive team. He made coffee runs, brought food that Claire barely touched, and sat quietly supportive through respiratory treatments and doctor consultations. As evening deepened into night, Liam's condition remained stable but concerning. His fever persisted despite medication, and his oxygen requirements hadn't decreased. You should go home, Claire said around midnight, her voice rough with fatigue. Tyler needs you. Tyler is having the time of his life with Mrs. Abernathy. She's teaching him to bake cookies and letting him stay up late watching nature documentaries. Ben stretched in the uncomfortable hospital chair. I'm staying unless you really want me to leave. Claire shook her head, relief evident despite her protest. You're as stubborn as your security protocols. I prefer persistently reliable. A nurse entered to check Liam's vitals, frowning slightly at the temperature reading. Still 102.4. I'll let Dr. Reynolds know. After she left, Claire moved to sit on the edge of Liam's bed, gently stroking his hair. When Emma was born, I was back at work within 2 weeks, determined to prove motherhood wouldn't affect my professional performance. Her voice was quiet, reflective. When Liam came along 2 years later, I did the same. Checked email during pediatrician appointments. Took conference calls while they napped. Ben listened, understanding she needed to talk to process. The first time Liam had an asthma attack, he was 3. David was at a technology conference in Singapore. I was in the middle of our Series B funding meetings. Claire's hand continued its gentle motion across her son's forehead. The preschool called 4 times before they reached me. By the time I got to the emergency room, he was already intubated. That must have been terrifying. It was the worst moment of my life, seeing him like that, knowing I hadn't been there when he needed me most. Claire looked up, meeting Ben's eyes across the hospital bed. I swore it would never happen again. I restructured the entire company around being available for my children. Implemented remote work policies, flexible schedules, on-site childcare. That's why you understand about my schedule with Tyler about putting him first. Claire nodded. When you opened your door that night and didn't hesitate to help us, didn't see us as an inconvenience or a complication, it meant more than you could know. It reminded me of the person I've tried to become. On the honesty of the moment, the shared understanding of what it meant to reshape a life around a child's needs created a connection that transcended their complicated professional relationship. In the quiet hospital room with Liam sleeping fitfully between them, Ben recognized that his feelings for Claire had evolved far beyond admiration or attraction. He cared for her deeply, completely, not despite the complications she brought into his life, but because of the values those complications revealed: her fierce protection of her children, her willingness to rebuild after betrayal, her determination to lead with both strength and compassion. The revelation should have alarmed him, given their professional relationship and the events of the past 24 hours. Instead, it settled into him with the quiet certainty of recognition, not a new truth, but one he'd been avoiding acknowledging. Morning brought slight improvement. Liam's fever had decreased and his oxygen requirements had stabilized. Claire, who had dozed fitfully in the chair beside the bed, looked exhausted, but relieved when Dr. Reynolds delivered the cautiously optimistic update. "The antibiotics are starting to work," the doctor explained. "His white blood cell count is down slightly. We're not out of the woods, but we're heading in the right direction." After the doctor left, Ben convinced Claire to take a brief break. "Go shower in the patient family room. I brought you clean clothes from your office emergency stash. I'll stay with Liam and call immediately if anything changes." Claire hesitated, maternal instinct warring with physical need. "You'll be more help to him if you take care of yourself," Ben said gently. 15 minutes, that's it. She finally nodded, taking the small overnight bag he'd prepared. 15 minutes, not a second more. While she was gone, Ben sat beside Liam, who was awake but tired, the oxygen mask replaced with a nasal cannula that allowed him to speak. "Is Mom okay?" the boy asked, his voice weak but concerned. Ben smiled, touched by the child's awareness of his mother's distress, even through his own illness. "She's okay. Just worried about you, Rocket Man. She gets scared when I'm sick." Liam's fingers plucked restlessly at the hospital blanket. "She tries to be brave, but I can tell. That's because she loves you more than anything in the world." Liam was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Do you love my mom?" The direct question caught Ben off guard. He considered deflecting, offering a child-appropriate evasion. But something in Liam's serious expression demanded honesty. "I care about your mom very much," he said carefully. "She's one of the strongest, kindest people I've ever met." Liam seemed to consider this answer, then nodded slightly. "That's good. She smiles more when you're around." Before Ben could respond to this observation, Liam's eyes drifted closed again, exhaustion claiming him. Ben sat back in the chair, the child's simple insight echoing in his mind. Did Claire smile more when he was around? Did he make her happy in the same unexpected way she had brightened his life? Claire returned looking marginally refreshed, her hair damp from the shower, wearing the clean clothes Ben had brought. "Any change?" He woke up for a few minutes, seemed more alert. Relief softened her features. "Thank you for staying for everything." "I told you, I'm here for whatever you need." Claire looked at him for a long moment, something unspoken passing between them. Then her phone buzzed. The hospital room's landline had poor reception, so she'd been periodically checking messages in the hallway. "It's the office," she said, glancing at the screen. "I should go take the call." "I'll stay with Liam." Claire stepped into the hallway, returning minutes later with a troubled expression. "The board is calling an emergency session. David has filed an intellectual property claim against SmartFlow using the information Alexandra provided. He's seeking an injunction to halt Project Nexus development." Ben frowned. "He's moving faster than I expected." "He knows I'm vulnerable right now with Liam in the hospital." Claire's voice hardened. "He's always had perfect timing for attacks." "What will you do?" Claire looked at her sleeping son, conflict evident in her expression. "I can't leave him. Not now, not again." "So don't." Ben stood, decision made. "I'll go. I'll represent the security division and provide the technical context the board needs." "Ben, I can't ask you to." "You didn't ask, I offered. There's a difference." He echoed her own words from their first meeting, earning a small, grateful smile. "I know the security implications better than anyone except you. Let me do this for you, Claire." After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. "Thank you. My assistant will brief you on the way. Just don't let them panic. David's legal claim is weak, but he's counting on fear to drive hasty decisions." "I won't let that happen." As Ben prepared to leave, Claire caught his hand. Ben. She seemed about to say something more, then simply squeezed his fingers. Come back when it's done. Wild horses couldn't keep me away. He squeezed back and then gently released her hand. Take care of Rocket Man. I'll handle the board. The Smart Flow boardroom was tense when Ben arrived, executives speaking in urgent whispers that ceased when he entered. Marcus, the legal counsel, was distributing documents and looking grim. Where's Claire? Demanded Richard Benson, the lead investor and board chairman. With her critically ill son, where she should be, Ben replied evenly. I'm here representing the security division and to provide technical context for David's claims. Richard frowned. This is an executive matter. With all due respect, Mr. Carson. With all due respect, Mr. Benson, Ben interrupted. I designed the security architecture that David is claiming to own. I understand the technical specifications better than anyone in this room, and Claire Anderson asked me to be here. His quiet confidence silenced the objection. The meeting began with Marcus outlining David's legal claim that Project Nexus incorporated proprietary security protocols he had developed during his tenure at SmartFlow. The preliminary filing includes code snippets and architecture diagrams that match our current development, Marcus explained. He's seeking both damages and an injunction to halt development until ownership can be determined. How did he get this information? Richard demanded. Alexandra Winters provided it, Ben said, keeping his voice neutral. As we discussed in yesterday's meeting. So Claire's CTO betrayed her, and now her ex-husband is using that information to potentially destroy the company. Richard's tone was accusatory, and she's not even here to address it. Ben felt a surge of protective anger, but kept his expression professional. Claire is at the hospital with her 7-year-old son, who has pneumonia complicated by asthma. She's monitoring this situation closely and has empowered me to represent the security aspects of this claim, which are, Ben opened his laptop, connecting it to the room's display system. David's claim is fundamentally flawed from a technical perspective. The security architecture he's claiming ownership of bears superficial similarities to code he worked on, but the underlying approach is entirely different. For the next hour, Ben methodically dismantled David's technical claims using his deep knowledge of both current and historical SmartFlow security protocols. He explained complex concepts in terms the non-technical board members could grasp, outlined the innovative approaches he had implemented, and demonstrated how Project Nexus represented a fundamental departure from David's original work. In summary, he concluded, what David is claiming as his intellectual property is actually an entirely new security framework that bears his fingerprints only because Alexandra selectively provided him with information to create that impression. The board members exchanged glances, visibly relieved by Ben's authoritative analysis. Richard looked less hostile, now studying Ben with newfound respect. Thank you, Mr. Carson. That clarifies the technical aspects considerably. He turned to Marcus. How do we proceed legally? We file a comprehensive response, including Mr. Carson's technical analysis. We request an expedited hearing and counter with our own claim of corporate espionage. Marcus closed his folder. Based on what we've heard today, I'm confident we can defeat the injunction request. As the meeting concluded, Richard approached Ben privately. You handled that impressively. Claire was right about you. Right about what? That you understand not just the technology, but the company's mission. Richard studied him thoughtfully. She trusts you. That's not something Claire Anderson does easily, especially after David. Ben wasn't sure how to respond to this assessment, so he simply nodded. Tell her, Richard hesitated, tell her the board stands behind her, and that we all hope Liam recovers quickly. I will. As Ben drove back to the hospital, he reflected on how completely his life had transformed in just a few months. From warehouse manager to security director, from single father, struggling alone, to team. What exactly partner friend? Something still undefined but increasingly essential to both him and Claire. Whatever it was, he knew one thing with certainty. He was committed to standing beside Claire through this crisis, to protecting both her company and her family, however he could. When Ben returned to the hospital room, he found Claire asleep in the chair beside Liam's bed, her hand resting protectively on her son's arm. The boy was awake, looking slightly better than earlier, his eyes brightening when he spotted Ben in the doorway. Mr. Bent, he whispered, careful not to wake his mother. You came back. Of course I did, and I promised, didn't I? Ben moved quietly to the bedside. How are you feeling, Rocket Man? Better. The doctor said my oxygen numbers are good now. That's excellent news. Ben gently brushed the hair from the boy's forehead, checking his temperature the way he did with Tyler when he was sick. Still a little warm, but definitely cooler than yesterday. Liam nodded. Mom's been here the whole time. She didn't even answer her phone when it rang. The simple observation revealed volumes about Claire's shift in priorities. The CEO who was always available was now deliberately unreachable, focused entirely on her son. That's because you're the most important person in her world, Ben said softly. You didn't tell me if she's your girlfriend, Liam said with a child's directness. Ben smiled. It's complicated, buddy. That's what grown-ups say when they don't want to answer. You're too smart for your own good. Ben adjusted the boy's blanket. Your mom and I care about each other very much. The rest we're still figuring out. Liam considered this answer, then nodded seriously. That's okay. Figuring things out takes time. Like when I was learning to tie my shoes. Ben chuckled at the comparison. Exactly like that. Claire stirred, then opened her eyes to find Ben and Liam in quiet conversation. For a moment, still half asleep, her expression was unguarded. Pure joy at seeing Ben had returned. Then awareness returned, and she sat up straighter. How did it go, the board meeting? Successfully. Ben filled her in quietly while Liam dozed off again, explaining how he'd addressed the technical aspects of David's claim and the board's supportive response. Thank you, Claire said when he finished. I don't know how I would have handled all this without you. You would have managed. You're Claire Anderson. Ben smiled, but I'm glad you didn't have to. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Liam sleep, the beeping monitors, a reassuring rhythm in the background. Then Claire spoke, her voice thoughtful. When this is all over, Liam recovered, the legal issues resolved. We should talk. About us. Ben's heart rate quickened at the simple words. Us, whatever this is between us. Claire met his eyes directly. It's more than professional, more than friendship. At least it is for me. For me too, Ben admitted quietly. Has been for a while now. Claire's smile was like sunrise after a long night. Good, that's good. Before they could say more, a nurse entered to check Liam's vitals, followed shortly by Dr. Reynolds with encouraging news. Liam's latest blood work showed the infection responding well to treatment. If his improvement continued, he might be able to go home in 48 hours. The crisis wasn't over, but the tide had turned. As Ben watched Claire receive the news, her professional composure momentarily giving way to a mother's relief, he knew with absolute certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, David's legal attacks, SmartFlow's future, their own complicated relationship, they would face them together. That evening, Ben brought Tyler to visit along with Emma, who had been desperate to see her brother. The children's presence transformed the sterile hospital room, filling it with whispers and giggles, as they showed Liam the get-well cards they had made and told him about school. Watching them together, Ben caught Claire's eye across the room. The connection between them was palpable, strengthened by crisis, cemented by shared values, evolving into something neither had expected, but both now recognized as essential. Whatever name they eventually gave it, whatever form it ultimately took, Ben knew one thing with certainty. The unexpected twist of Claire appearing on his doorstep that Friday night had changed the trajectory of his life in ways he could never have imagined. Opening doors he had thought forever closed, offering not just professional redemption, but personal renewal as well. And despite all the complications, despite the challenges still to come, he wouldn't change a single moment of it. 3 days later, Liam was discharged from the hospital. His color had returned, the labored breathing replaced by occasional coughs that grew less frequent with each passing day. The medical crisis had eased, but the professional one continued to escalate. David's legal maneuvers had intensified. Beyond the intellectual property claims, he had launched a media campaign painting Claire as a ruthless executive who had pushed out her co-founder husband and stolen his innovations. The business press, always hungry for tech industry drama, amplified the story. Ben arrived at Claire's home the morning after Liam's discharge, carrying breakfast and security equipment. He found the family in the kitchen, Liam still in pajamas, but clearly improving, Emma setting the table with careful precision, Claire reviewing documents while simultaneously helping Liam with his breathing exercises. Reinforcements have arrived, Ben announced as Tyler followed him in carrying a bag of freshly baked muffins. Mr. Ben Tyler. Liam's face brightened, though he still moved with the careful motions of someone recently ill. Claire looked up, exhaustion evident beneath her smile. You're a lifesaver, both of you. While the children ate breakfast in the sunroom, Ben and Claire spread the legal documents across the kitchen island, strategizing their response to David's escalating attacks. He's scheduled 3 media interviews this week, Claire said, highlighting a section of the PR report. Forbes, TechCrunch, and Bloomberg. He's going all in on the narrative that I stole his life's work. The technical evidence is on our side, Ben reminded her. Marcus is confident the IP claim will fail. The legal battle isn't what worries me most. It's the court of public opinion. Claire pushed back, her hair frustration evident. Perception matters to investors, to customers, to potential partners. David knows that. This isn't about winning in court. It's about damaging SmartFlow's reputation enough to devalue the company. Ben studied her across the counter. Despite everything, her son's illness, her ex-husband's attacks, the business crisis, she remained focused, strategic. It only deepened his admiration. What about Alexandra? Could her testimony help counter David's narrative? She's agreed to provide a statement confirming she leaked the information, but she's refusing to implicate David directly. Their relationship complicates everything. Claire sighed. And frankly, after her betrayal, her credibility is questionable anyway. Ben was about to respond when his phone chimed with a security alert. He checked the notification, frowning. What is it? Claire asked instantly. Alert. Someone's probing your home network. Sophisticated pattern trying to find vulnerabilities. Ben was already opening his laptop. Don't worry, the new security system is blocking it, but the attempt is concerning. David. Likely. Or someone working for him. Ben's fingers flew across the keyboard, tracing the intrusion attempt. He's escalating from corporate espionage to personal targeting. Claire's expression hardened. He knows I'm home with Liam. He's trying to rattle me, show he can reach into every aspect of my life. He's failing. Ben looked up from his screen. The security is holding. But this changes things, Claire. This isn't just about SmartFlow anymore. It's about your family's safety. Claire glanced toward the sunroom where the children were laughing together. I won't let him frighten me. Or them. Good, because I have an idea. Ben closed his laptop, decision made. One that addresses both the security threat and the PR problem. I'm listening. We've been playing defense, responding to David's attacks, patching vulnerabilities after he exposes them. It's time to go on offense. Ben leaned forward, intensity in his voice. What if we completely reinvent SmartFlow's security architecture? Not just incremental improvements, but a fundamental paradigm shift that renders David's knowledge obsolete. That would take months of development resources we don't have while fighting this legal battle. Not if we use the adaptive learning framework I've been developing in my spare time. Ben pulled out his tablet, showing Claire the designs he'd been refining since joining SmartFlow. It's a self-evolving security system that learns from intrusion attempts, constantly rebuilding its own architecture. David wouldn't just be locked out, he'd be irrelevant. Claire studied the design's professional interest overriding fatigue. This is brilliant, Ben, but implementing something this innovative under our current circumstances would be exactly what the company needs. A bold move that shifts the narrative from scandal to innovation. Ben held her gaze. You didn't build SmartFlow by playing it safe, Claire. You built it by taking the calculated risk when others wouldn't. Something rekindled in Claire's eyes, the entrepreneurial fire that had been temporarily dimmed by personal crisis. You're right. And it addresses our most immediate problem, too. How so? David's attacks are effective because they're personal. He knows you, knows how you think, how you respond. Claire tapped the tablet screen. But he doesn't know you. He can't anticipate your approach because it's fundamentally different from anything SmartFlow has done before. Ben nodded, following her reasoning. So we don't just implement a new security system. We announce it publicly, Claire finished. Position it as SmartFlow's next evolution, one that happens to render David's claims about stolen architecture completely moot. Exactly. Ben felt a surge of excitement at their shared vision. We changed the conversation from Claire versus David to SmartFlow's groundbreaking security innovation. Metal, the adaptive shield. Claire named it immediately, her business instincts engaging. First self-evolving security framework for manufacturing environments. I like it. Ben smiled, energized by her immediate grasp of his concept. Bold name for a bold approach. How quickly can we have a working prototype? With a dedicated team, 2 weeks for proof of concept, another 2 for beta implementation. Claire was already reaching for her phone. I'll call an emergency executive session for tomorrow morning. We'll need to reallocate resources, adjust development priorities. What about Project Nexus? The injunction hearing is in 3 weeks. We continue development on parallel tracks. The Shield becomes our public focus, our offensive move, while Nexus continues as planned. Claire's expression grew determined. David wants a fight. We'll give him one he never expected. The next morning, Ben presented the adaptive Shield concept to SmartFlow's executive team. Initial skepticism gave way to cautious enthusiasm as he outlined the technical approach, implementation timeline, and strategic advantages. This isn't just a defensive measure against David's attacks, Claire concluded after Ben's presentation. It's positioning SmartFlow at the forefront of dynamic security architecture, an innovation that will benefit our customers and partners for years to come. Richard Benson, who had flown in specifically for the meeting, studied the technical specifications with a thoughtful expression. It's ambitious, risky even, but potentially game-changing. He looked up at Ben. You developed this concept on your own time. I've been working on adaptive security theories for years, Ben explained. It was originally designed for critical infrastructure protection, but the principles apply perfectly to SmartFlow's distributed manufacturing environment. And you're willing to assign the intellectual property rights to SmartFlow with appropriate recognition and compensation, yes. Ben glanced at Claire. I believe in what this company stands for in its mission of making manufacturing smarter and more accessible. The Shield belongs here. After thorough discussion, the executive team unanimously approved the project. Resources would be immediately reallocated, with Ben leading a hand-picked development team. Claire would oversee the strategic implementation and public messaging. As the meeting concluded, Richard pulled Claire and Ben aside. This is exactly the bold move we need right now. But be prepared. David will see this as a direct challenge. It is a direct challenge, Claire said. One that shifts the battlefield to terrain where we have the advantage. The next 3 weeks unfolded in a blur of intense development, legal preparations, and strategic planning. Ben practically lived at SmartFlow headquarters, leading his team through marathon coding sessions and architectural debates. The adaptive Shield took shape rapidly, its innovative approach capturing the imagination of even the most skeptical engineers. Claire divided her time between the office and home, ensuring Liam's continued recovery while preparing for both the injunction hearing and the Shield announcement. The children spent afternoons together, sometimes at Ben's house under Mrs. Abernathy's watchful eye, sometimes at Claire's with Marianne. Their easy friendship became a source of stability amid the professional chaos. The night before the injunction hearing, Ben and Claire worked late at her home office, finalizing their legal strategy while the children slept upstairs. The Shield prototype had exceeded expectations in preliminary testing, but they agreed to delay the public announcement until after the hearing. Tomorrow will determine whether we're announcing from a position of strength or damage control, Claire said, closing the final brief they'd been reviewing. Either way, we announce. Ben stretched, fatigue evident after weeks of minimal sleep. The Shield is ready, and it's our best counter to whatever David has planned. Claire studied him across the desk, concern softening her professional focus. You're exhausted. When was the last time you slept more than 4 hours? I could ask you the same question. A small smile played at her lips. We make quite the pair, don't we, workaholics with savior complexes? I prefer dedicated professionals with a healthy sense of responsibility. Claire's laugh was soft in the quiet house. Much better. Very corporate approved. The moment of levity faded, replaced by the weight of what tomorrow represented, not just for SmartFlow, but for them personally. The past weeks had deepened their connection, their shared crisis response, cementing a partnership that transcended professional collaboration. Whatever happens tomorrow, Ben said quietly, we face it together. Claire reached across the desk, taking his hand. Together. The courtroom was crowded the next morning. Industry journalists, curious competitors, SmartFlow employees. David sat at the plaintiff's table, impeccably dressed in an expensive suit, his attorney a distinguished older man from a prestigious firm. Claire and Ben sat with Marcus at the defense table, their posture confident despite the stakes. As proceedings began, David's attorney presented their case. That Project Nexus incorporated proprietary security architecture David had developed that Claire had systematically pushed him out to claim sole credit for his innovations, that SmartFlow was essentially built on his intellectual property. When Marcus rose for the defense, he didn't immediately dispute these claims. Instead, he called Ben to the witness stand. Mr. Carson, please state your position at SmartFlow Solutions, Director of Security Architecture. And prior to joining SmartFlow, what was your professional background? Ben outlined his experience, Meridian Tech, his security patents, his consulting work. He explained how he had completely redesigned SmartFlow's security infrastructure, implementing approaches fundamentally different from those used during David's tenure. Would you characterize Project Nexus as derivative of Mr. Spencer's previous work? No. Project Nexus utilizes security architecture I designed incorporating principles that didn't exist when Mr. Spencer was with the company. David's attorney cross-examined aggressively, trying to portray Ben as Claire's puppet, suggesting he had been hired specifically to create a veneer of originality over David's stolen concepts. Ben remained composed, his technical expertise evident, as he methodically dismantled each accusation with precise, accessible explanations of the architectural differences. When Claire took the stand, the atmosphere intensified. David leaned forward, his expression hard, as he watched his ex-wife swear to tell the truth. Ms. Anderson, Marcus began, did you hire Mr. Carson specifically to replace architecture designed by Mr. Spencer? No, I hired Mr. Carson because of his exceptional talent and innovative approach to security design, which we desperately needed after discovering vulnerabilities in our existing systems. And these vulnerabilities, were they in systems designed by Mr. Spencer? Yes, systems that had become increasingly inadequate as our company grew and evolved. David's attorney's cross-examination was personal and pointed clearly, attempting to provoke an emotional response. He suggested Claire had systematically undermined David both professionally and personally, that she had orchestrated his removal to gain control of his company. Claire remained composed, addressing each accusation with calm clarity. When asked about Alexandra Winter's role in providing information to David, she didn't vilify her former CTO, but instead expressed disappointment in the breach of trust, while acknowledging Alexandra's technical contributions to the company. By the time closing arguments concluded, the momentum had clearly shifted. The judge announced she would issue her ruling on the injunction request within 48 hours, but her questions throughout had suggested skepticism toward David's claims. Outside the courthouse, reporters clustered around both parties. David made a brief cutting statement about corporate betrayal and his determination to reclaim what was rightfully his. When the microphones turned to Claire, she surprised everyone with her response. Rather than dwelling on the past, SmartFlow Solutions is focused on the future. Tomorrow morning, we'll be announcing a technological breakthrough that renders this entire dispute moot, a completely new approach to security architecture that will benefit our customers and partners worldwide. The statement created exactly the buzz they had hoped for. By evening, tech publications were speculating about SmartFlow's mysterious announcement, the legal drama temporarily overshadowed by innovation intrigue. The next morning, Claire and Ben stood together at SmartFlow headquarters as she unveiled the adaptive shield to assembled media and industry analysts. Ben provided the technical explanation, his quiet authority and evident expertise lending credibility to the ambitious claims. Traditional security architecture is static, walls built to specific dimensions that attackers eventually find ways to scale, he explained. The adaptive shield is dynamic, a living system that learns from every interaction, constantly rebuilding itself to address emerging threats. It doesn't just react to intrusions, it evolves to prevent them. The announcement was met with enthusiastic response. Tech publications praised the innovative approach. Industry analysts highlighted the potential applications beyond manufacturing, and SmartFlow's stock price rose 12% by market close. When the judge's ruling came the following afternoon, denying David's injunction request and expressing serious doubts about the merits of his underlying claims, it felt almost anticlimactic. The narrative had already shifted from legal drama to technological innovation, exactly as Claire and Ben had intended. That evening, they celebrated quietly at Ben's house, the children playing video games, while the adults sat on the back porch, finally allowing themselves to acknowledge their victory. You changed the conversation, Ben said, raising his glass in a toast to Claire. From scandal to innovation in less than a week. Masterful. We changed it, Claire corrected, touching her glass to his. Your shield gave us something worth talking about. The moment was interrupted by Ben's phone, a text from his father's nursing home. His expression changed as he read it. What's wrong? Claire asked immediately. Dad's had a setback. Not critical, but they're adjusting his medication. Ben was already standing. I should go see him. Of course. Do you want company? The offer touched him. That amid everything else in her life, Claire would make time for this personal concern of his. Thank you, but it's probably better if I go alone. His good days and bad days are unpredictable. Claire nodded, understanding without offense. Take all the time you need. The SHIELD team can manage without you for a day or two. Ben found his father in the memory care unit's common room, staring out the window at the facility's garden. Robert Carson had good days and bad since his diagnosis of early-onset dementia complicated by the neurological effects of Agent Orange exposure during his Vietnam service. Today appeared to be somewhere in between. Recognition in his eyes when Ben approached, but confusion about the details of his son's life. You still at the warehouse? Robert asked as they sat together. No, Dad. I'm working at a technology company now. Remember I told you about it last visit? Right. Robert nodded, though uncertainty lingered in his expression. You're fixing computers again, like before Sarah left. Something like that. Good. You were wasted in that warehouse. Robert's gaze sharpened momentarily, the former engineer briefly visible through the fog of his illness. You've got a mind for systems, son. Always did. See how things connect when others just see parts. They talked for an hour, Robert drifting between clarity and confusion, Ben patiently following wherever the conversation led. As he prepared to leave, his father gripped his hand with surprising strength. You look different, Robert said, studying his son's face. Better, less haunted. Ben smiled. I'm doing well, Dad, really well. Woman involved. The question was accompanied by a knowing look that transcended his cognitive challenges. Maybe. It's complicated. Robert chuckled. Always is, son. Always is. His expression grew serious. Don't waste time on complicated. Ben, life's too short. If she makes you better, that's all that matters. The simple wisdom stayed with Ben as he drove home. His father was right. Claire did make him better. She challenged him intellectually, respected his priorities as a father, valued his expertise without ego. The complications, their professional relationship, their past, the still unfolding drama with David, seemed increasingly irrelevant compared to that fundamental truth. When he arrived home, he found Claire asleep on his couch, apparently having waited for his return. Tyler had left a note explaining that Miss Claire was tired, so I said she could nap while we play upstairs with Em and Liam. Ben stood watching her for a moment. The powerful CEO vulnerable in sleep, her usual composure softened. She had stayed wanting to be there when he returned from the nursing home, offering silent support for a difficult aspect of his life. As if sensing his presence, Claire stirred and opened her eyes. Hey, she said softly. How's your dad? Having a medium day. Recognized me but thought I still worked at the warehouse. Ben sat beside her. Thank you for staying. Of course, she sat up, brushing her hair back from her face. The kids have been entertaining each other. They've created some elaborate game involving dinosaurs and space exploration. Ben smiled, imagining the scenario. Sounds about right. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, then Claire spoke. I've been thinking about what's next. For SmartFlow, for the SHIELD, for everything we've started. She paused. The SHIELD has potential far beyond our current applications. It could protect infrastructure, healthcare systems, financial networks. Claire's eyes held the visionary look Ben had come to recognize. But developing those applications would require resources and expertise beyond what SmartFlow currently has. You're thinking partnership acquisition. I'm thinking new venture, a separate entity focused specifically on adaptive security with SmartFlow as the first client and primary investor. Claire watched his reaction carefully. Co-founded by the two people who created the SHIELD in the first place. Ben blinked, processing the implication. You and me equal partners. Your technical genius, my business experience. A clean slate without David's shadow or SmartFlow's manufacturing focus. The proposal stunned him, not just for its boldness, but for what it represented personally. Claire wasn't just offering a business opportunity. She was suggesting they build something together, a shared creation that would combine their strengths and cement their partnership. What about SmartFlow, he asked. You built that company from nothing. SmartFlow will always be my first business child, but it's established now with a strong executive team and clear direction. Claire leaned forward, intensity in her expression. This new venture would allow us to focus specifically on the Shield technology to develop it without the constraints of SmartFlow's primary business model. And the personal implications us working together as equal partners. Ben asked the question that hung between them. Claire met his gaze directly. I think we've proven we make an exceptional team, professionally and personally. Uncertainty flickered briefly. Unless that's not what you want. Ben reached for her hand. It's exactly what I want. I just needed to hear you say it. The relief in her smile warmed him. So that's a yes. It's a yes to the business venture. He paused, gathering courage. And to whatever else we're building here together. Claire's fingers tightened around his. Together. From upstairs came the sound of children's laughter. 3 distinct voices blending in shared joy. Ben and Claire looked toward the ceiling, then back at each other, recognition passing between them. What they were building extended far beyond business plans or security systems. It encompassed the children running upstairs, the home they sat in, the future stretching before them, unexpected, challenging, but infinitely more promising than either could have imagined just months ago. The front door had opened on a rainy Friday night, and everything had changed. Not just once, but again and again, each small choice, each moment of trust or courage, redirecting their paths until they converged here. 2 people who had lost faith in second chances, discovering that sometimes the greatest engineering isn't in systems, but in starting over. My Kids Are in the Car, Part 6, 1 month later. Adaptive Horizon launched officially. The media coverage was extensive, not just for the innovative technology, but for the partnership behind it. Claire Anderson, the visionary CEO who had built SmartFlow from nothing, now co-founding a security venture, with Ben Carson, the brilliant engineer who had transformed her company's approach to data protection. Some articles mentioned their personal relationship, but it was presented as secondary to their professional collaboration, exactly as they had hoped. The focus remained on the Shield technology and its potential applications across industries. The launch event, held at a downtown technology center, featured demonstrations of the Shield's capabilities and presentations from initial clients already implementing the system. Ben, once uncomfortable in the spotlight, delivered a compelling technical overview that had potential investors lining up afterward. As the formal presentations concluded and the networking reception began, Richard Benson approached them, champagne glass in hand. Congratulations to you both. The Shield is everything you promised and more. He clinked his glass against theirs. An adaptive horizon is poised to become a major player very quickly. Thank you for your support, Richard, Claire said. SmartFlow's backing made this possible. Smart investment, that's all. Richard's expression grew more personal, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't pleased to see you both so fulfilled, professionally and otherwise. As Richard moved on to greet other guests, Ben and Claire exchanged amused glances at his diplomatic reference to their relationship. Speaking of otherwise, Ben said quietly, leading Claire to a quieter corner of the reception. I've been thinking about something your daughter said. Emma, what wisdom has she imparted now? When we told the kids about moving in together, she asked if we were getting married. Claire's eyebrow raised. I remember. We said not yet. Ben reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small velvet box. I've been thinking about that yet. Claire's breath caught as he opened the box, revealing a ring with a single elegant emerald surrounded by small diamonds. Ben, I'm not proposing formally. Not here, not now. That deserves a more private moment with the children involved. His eyes held hers steadily. But I wanted you to know that I've bought the ring. That whenever you're ready, whenever the timing feels right for our family, I'm ready to make it official. Claire touched the ring gently, then closed the box and returned it to his hand. Keep it safe. The right moment will come, sooner rather than later, I think. Their private moment was interrupted by Alexandra Winters, now SmartFlow's acting COO, approaching with an industry analyst in tow. They smoothly transitioned back to professional mode, fielding questions about implementation timelines and scalability. Hours later, after the event concluded successfully and they had returned home to relieve Mrs. Abernathy from childcare duties, they checked on the sleeping children before retiring to their room. Emma asked me about wedding dresses last week, Claire mentioned as they prepared for bed, completely out of nowhere. I think the children are plotting something. Ben laughed softly. Tyler asked if Grandpa could come live with us after the wedding. When I said we weren't planning a wedding yet, he gave me this look like I was being deliberately obtuse. They're 3 steps ahead of us as usual. Claire settled beside him, her head finding its familiar place on his shoulder. Maybe we should catch up. Maybe we should. Ben's arm tightened around her. I was thinking, what about a small ceremony here, just family, close friends? The children could help plan it. I'd like that. Claire's voice was soft in the darkened room. Something simple and real. No media, no industry expectations. Just us building something that matters. Ben pressed a kiss to her temple. Like everything else we built together. The following weekend, they gathered the children in the backyard for a family meeting. Ben and Claire sat side by side on the porch steps, the 3 children arrayed before them on the lawn. We have something important to ask you. Claire began smiling as the children immediately perked up, sensing a significant announcement. Ben reached for her hand. We've been thinking about making our family official. Legally official. You're getting married, Emma exclaimed, unable to contain herself. I knew it. Well, that depends, Ben said seriously. We wanted to ask what you 3 think about it first. The children exchanged glances of disbelief at the adults' apparent obtuseness. We already decided, Tyler said, his tone suggesting this should have been obvious. Remember the chart? The chart was about living together, Claire pointed out. Marriage is a little different. Liam stood, hands on his hips, in an unconscious mimicry of his mother's decisive stance. We vote yes, unanimous. Unanimous, huh? Ben tried to maintain a serious expression despite his amusement. Well, that's good to know because we were thinking about having the wedding right here in our backyard and we'd need your help to plan it. The reaction was immediate and enthusiastic. All 3 children talking at once about decorations and cake and who would get to hold the rings. I think that's a yes, Claire murmured to Ben, watching their excitement with shining eyes. I think you're right. Ben squeezed her hand. Family decision officially approved. 6 weeks later, on a perfect autumn afternoon, their backyard was transformed. Paper lanterns hung from tree branches. Wildflowers arranged in mason jars lined a simple aisle, and a wooden arch covered in ivy stood beneath the old oak tree. Chairs were arranged in a semicircle, not separated by bride and groom sides, but mixed together like the blended family they were becoming. The guest list was small but meaningful. Claire's parents, Ben's father having one of his best days in months, Mr. and Mrs. Abernathy, a few close colleagues from both SmartFlow and Adaptive Horizon, Claire's childhood friend who had first suggested online dating on that fateful night. The ceremony itself was simple and deeply personal. The children played central roles, Emma as flower girl, Liam and Tyler jointly serving as ring bearers. The vows they exchanged weren't traditional, but written together, acknowledging the unique path that had brought them to this moment. I promise to see you, truly see you, Ben said, holding Claire's hands beneath the ivy-covered arch. Not the CEO, not the business partner, but the woman who stood on my porch that night, brave enough to ask for help, strong enough to offer it in return. I promise to trust you, Claire responded, her voice steady despite the emotion shining in her eyes. With my children, with my dreams, with the future we're building together. To remember that the strongest systems are those that adapt and grow, that find strength in connection rather than isolation. After the simple ceremony, the celebration continued into evening. Dinner at tables set up on the lawn, dancing to music played through speakers. Tyler had proudly set up cake that the children had helped design with minimal parental intervention regarding the 3-tier dinosaur theme. As twilight deepened and the paper lanterns glowed like stars among the trees, Ben found Claire standing alone for a moment, watching the children chase fireflies across the yard. Mrs. Carson, he said softly, coming to stand beside his wife. Or is it Anderson Carson? We never did decide officially. Anderson Carson professionally, Carson personally. Claire leaned against him. Best of both worlds. They stood in comfortable silence, taking in the scene before them. Their children playing together, their friends and family mingling easily, their home illuminated for celebration. So different from that first night when Claire had appeared on Ben's doorstep with her children waiting hungry in the car. I never thanked you, Claire said suddenly, for opening your door that night, for seeing me when I was pretending to be someone else. You didn't need to thank me. You gave me something far more valuable in return. Ben's arms circled her waist. A second chance. At my career, it trusted everything. A second chance engineer, Claire said with a smile. Building something new from what others might have discarded. Building it together, Ben corrected, drawing her closer as their children ran laughing toward them, whole and happy in the gathering dusk. That's the only design that matters. As the family embraced beneath the lantern light, their separate journeys finally completely merged into one shared path forward. Ben thought of his father's simple wisdom from that day at the nursing home. If she makes you better, that's all that matters. Standing in his backyard, surrounded by the family they had created together, Ben knew with absolute certainty that they had indeed made each other better. As parents, as professionals, as people. And in doing so, they had engineered the most complex, most rewarding system of all. A family built on second chances, stronger for having been broken, more valuable for having been rebuilt, with deliberate care and enduring love. The unexpected twist of Claire appearing on his doorstep that Friday night had changed the trajectory of Ben's life in ways he could never have imagined, opening doors he had thought forever closed. And despite all the complications, despite the challenges they had overcome together, he wouldn't change a single moment of the journey that had led them here, to this perfect, ordinary miracle of belonging. In the quiet evening with the children's laughter drifting through the air and Claire's hand warm in his, Ben remembered something he'd once told her about tacos and duct tape and knowing when to start over. Sometimes he thought the greatest engineering isn't in systems, but in second chances.